Chapter 188. Lan Bingchen's words could be considered sensible. Since the situation was irreversible, he could only fall on Nie Tian's side. Lan Bingchen suddenly asked, "Mr. Nie, when do you plan to go to Heaven Luo City?" Nie Tian didn't hide anything and directly said, "I will leave very soon, latest by tomorrow." Lan Bingchen pondered for a moment and said, "Heaven Luo City is 3,000 miles away from the Imperial City. Mr. Nie will need at least a few days to arrive. The current Heaven Luo City Lord is my uncle Lan Yunjiang. After I return to the Imperial Palace, I will immediately send a letter to him to prepare to leave immediately and vacate the City Lord's mansion for Mr. Nie." Nie Tian nodded, expressing his satisfaction. Lan Bingchen was quite thoughtful. At this moment, Lan Bingchen still wanted to say something, but he hesitated. How could Nie Tian not guess what he was thinking? He faintly smiled. "Don't worry. Heaven Luo City is located at the border between the Wen Qin Empire and the Blue Cloud Empire. If the Wen Qin Empire really wants to start a war with the Blue Cloud Empire, then Heaven Luo City will bear the brunt. I can guarantee you that with me here, the Wen Qin Empire's army won't be able to take half a step into Heaven Luo City, let alone threaten the Blue Cloud Empire. You can be at ease as your emperor, let me be your strongest barrier." "Many thanks, Mr. Nie." Lan Bingchen was extremely excited and immediately bowed. Qin Yetian poked Lan Bingchen at this moment, and the latter immediately reacted and wanted to apologize. However, Nie Tian waved his hand, indicating that it was no big deal. Nie Tian wasn't willing to listen to these kind of polite words. Heaven Luo City was what he wanted anyway, and if it could guarantee the Blue Cloud Empire's safety, why not? "Mr. Nie, I will take my leave now." Since Nie Tian had confirmed it, Lan Bingchen didn't stay any longer and said, "I will definitely send you off tomorrow." "No need." Nie Tian faintly smiled and indicated that Lan Bingchen could leave. Lan Bingchen and Qin Yetian immediately left. Today's matter was too big, and they needed to go back and digest it. After the two of them left, only Jin Mingxin, Nie Tian, and the others were left in the hall. "Mr. Nie, the guarantee you gave Lan Bingchen just now couldn't be true, right?" Jin Mingxin bluntly asked. "Of course it's true." Nie Tian smiled faintly. Jin Mingxin furrowed his brows and said, "Mr. Nie, you should know that Heaven Luo City is not only the border between the Wen Qin Empire and the Blue Cloud Empire, but it's also adjacent to the Water Crow Empire and the Sun Chu Empire. These three empires are second-rate empires, and the Blue Cloud Empire can't afford to offend them. Therefore, Heaven Luo City is truly a dangerous place." Waving his hand, Nie Tian interrupted Jin Mingxin's words and confidently said, "President Jin, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Although the other three empires are strong, as long as I am in Heaven Luo City, I will not allow others to covet it. If anyone dares to lay their hands on Heaven Luo City, I will make them pay a painful price." Looking at Nie Tian's calm face, Jin Mingxin immediately swallowed back the words he had prepared in his mind. Jin Mingxin had read countless people, and as long as he took a glance at them, he would basically be able to guess most of them. However, even though he had known Nie Tian for so long, he still felt that the latter was a mystery. The more he tried to see through him, the more he couldn't. If anyone else said that they could protect Heaven Luo City by themselves, Jin Mingxin definitely wouldn't believe it. However, coming from Nie Tian's mouth, he was 70 to 80% convinced. Nie Tian was a person who could create miracles. Thinking about it carefully, just 2 months ago, who would have thought that a youth from a third-rate city would be able to stand at the peak of the Blue Cloud Empire? Even the emperor had to be respectful to him like a servant. Such an unimaginable thing had happened just like that, and the protagonist was standing right in front of him. As Jin Mingxin thought of this, he actually believed Nie Tian's words by a lot. If Nie Tian said he could protect Heaven Luo City, then he definitely could. "President Jin, do you know of a place called Danwu City?" Nie Tian suddenly asked. Danwu City was the city that Gu Yi mentioned to Nye Tian. It was also the place where the Feng Qin, Shui Wu, and Ri Chu empires held the Danwu Provincial Assembly. Jin Mingxin was stunned for a moment, then said, Danwu City is just beside Heaven Luo City, separated by a river. However, this city doesn't belong to the three empires, but the Alchemist Guild's private city. Alchemist Guild City? Nye Tian was slightly stunned. Yes. Jin Mingxin nodded and explained, the Alchemist Guild is an ancient and huge organization. It is said that it has existed since the medieval era. In the 3,000 small worlds, almost every country has an Alchemist Guild branch. And the Alchemist Guild also has its own private city in various places. It is said that Danwu City is not only a private city of the Alchemist Guild, but there is also a red-robed elder of the 3,000 small worlds Alchemist Guild headquarters overseeing it. Therefore, even though Danwu City is located at the border of the three empires, no matter how the three empires fight, the flames of war never dare to burn into Danwu City. So that's how it is. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth curled up slightly, but he thought of something in his heart. He vaguely remembered that on the black iron token that Gu Yi gave him, there seemed to be two words engraved on the back. Red-robed? This old fella, could he be the red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild headquarters overseeing Danwu City? Nye Tian guessed in his heart. Although Nye Tian was an alchemist, he didn't know the rules of the 3,000 small worlds Alchemist Guild headquarters, nor did he know what this red-robed elder represented. President Jin, what does the red-robed elder mean? Nye Tian felt a little strange in his heart, and couldn't help but ask. Jin Mingxin was stunned for a moment, and looked at Nye Tian with a strange expression. That expression was clearly saying, "You're an alchemist, how can you not know what the red-robed elder means?" Although he had doubts in his heart, Jin Mingxin still explained, the elders of the 3,000 small worlds Alchemist Guild headquarters are divided into 4 grades: white-robed elder, red-robed elder, yellow-robed elder, and blue-robed elder. Among them, only the headquarters president can wear white robes, and is called white-robed elder. Red-robed elder is second only to the president, and it is said that there are only 7 red-robed elders in the Alchemist Guild headquarters. There are more yellow-robed and blue-robed elders, and basically, the branch presidents of first-rate empires or second-rate empires can become blue-robed or yellow-robed. Nye Tian couldn't help but curl his lips when he heard this and thought in his heart, the alchemists of the 3,000 small worlds are nothing much, but this division of grades is rather detailed. But hearing Jin Mingxin say this, it seemed that red-robed elders were very awesome, and gave off an awesome feeling. Mr. Nye, why did you suddenly mention Danwu City? Could it be that you're going to Heaven Luo City to participate in the Danwu City's Alchemy Grand Meet? Jin Mingxin suddenly thought of the Alchemy Grand Meet, and couldn't help but ask. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "That's not it. I'm not interested in whatever Alchemy Grand Meet. It's just that a friend asked me to look for him in Danwu City when I have time, so I'm just asking." What Nye Tian said wasn't false. It was indeed Gu Yi who asked him to go to Danwu City to take a look. Chapter 189. In the dense forest on the outskirts of Blue Cloud City. Phew! 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 A figure running wildly finally stopped, panting heavily as he held onto a large tree. Feng Wux's small face was pale, and he was still in a state of shock. He never thought that this diplomatic mission to the Blue Cloud Empire would end like this. Not only did the plan to exchange cities fail, but he even almost lost his life. Originally, Feng Wux thought that everything would go smoothly on this trip to the Blue Cloud Empire. He could even threaten the Blue Cloud Emperor at the same time. Who would have thought that a Nye Tian would appear out of nowhere and actually make him suffer a crushing defeat? Actually, this was all Feng Wux's own fault. He provoked the Jin residents first. Nye Tian was just giving him a taste of his own medicine. This was called courting death and not being able to live. Surnamed Nyebrat, When this prince returns to the Feng Qin Empire, I'll definitely make you and the Blue Cloud Empire pay the price in blood. Feng Wuke revealed a fierce expression as he gnashed his teeth. After resting for a moment, he no longer dared to stay and started running wildly. The Blue Cloud Empire was too dangerous. He did not want to stay a moment longer. At the same time, in the Jin residence's courtyard, Nie Tian and Qiushan stood opposite each other. Have you resolved your matter? Nie Tian looked at Qiushan and asked with a faint smile. Qiushan was not in the Jin residence previously because he went to Tyrant Cloud Academy to resolve an old matter. Fan Jinwu was the old matter that Qiushan wanted to resolve. Back then, Qiushan's essence meridians were destroyed because of Fan Jinwu. Now that his essence meridians had recovered and his strength had skyrocketed, he naturally would not let Fan Jinwu off. Nie Tian knew that Qiushan had already condensed a saber heart, so he was very confident in him. Even if Qi Feng did not intervene, Fan Jinwu was absolutely not Qiushan's match. Given Qiushan's performance today, Fan Jinwu could not even receive one saber strike from him. Yes. Qiushan nodded slightly, but a trace of helplessness flashed on his face. Nie Tian keenly caught the change in Qiushan's expression and frowned slightly. Qiushan, I don't want you to hide anything from me. Say it. The helplessness on Qiushan's face clearly revealed that he still had something to say to Nie Tian. In fact, Nie Tian could roughly guess what was going on. The first time Xiao Chen met Fan Jinji, he had mentioned that Fan Jinwu and Fan Jinji were just pawns in the framing of Qiushan. There was a mastermind behind the scenes. Fan Jinji had even told Qiushan to be an honest piece of trash, because the person behind them was not someone Qiushan could afford to offend. Nie Tian reckoned that Qiushan must have found out about the mastermind behind the scenes from Fan Jinwu. However, just as Fan Jinji said, the mastermind behind the scenes was very strong, far from what the current Qiushan could provoke. Qiushan hesitated for a moment, but seeing the determination in Nie Tian's eyes, he still said, Sir, have you heard of the deification sect? The transformation sect? Nie Tian was slightly stunned and immediately shook his head. Nie Tian had never heard of the God Transformation sect, but judging from Qiushan's expression, it should be a relatively large organization. The 3,000 small worlds are divided into 4 major regions. Right now, we are in one of the 4 regions, the South Mountain region. Qiushan explained, the South Mountain region has 2 sects that are even more powerful than first-rate empires. They are called the South Transformation Sect and the North Qiankuan Palace, respectively referring to the Transformation Sect and the Qiankuan Palace. At this point, Qiushan paused. Nie Tian had already guessed most of it and said, the mastermind behind the scenes who framed you back then was from the Transformation Sect, right? Qiushan nodded solemnly and said, I have already killed Fan Jinwu. Before he died, he said a name. Qiushan suddenly closed his eyes with a pained expression and a hint of despair. What name? Seeing Qiushan's expression, Nie Tian's heart couldn't help but sink. Dongfang Yu. Qiushan said the name word by word with difficulty, and the despair on his face became even more serious. Who is this person? Nie Tian was slightly stunned and immediately became a little curious. This person was clearly the mastermind behind the scenes who framed Qiushan back then, but since he could make Qiushan so desperate, his identity must be extraordinary. Transformation Sect Master. After a long time, Qiushan finally revealed Dongfang Yu's identity. This person is your enemy, right? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up. He patted Qiushan's shoulder and said, just a mere sect master. I can promise you that within 3 years, I will definitely help you get revenge. Mr. Nie. Qiushan's expression was excited, but he said, Mr. Nie might not know, but the Transformation Sect can be said to be the top force in the South Mountain region. Even in the 3,000 small worlds, it is definitely a first-class force. As the Transformation Sect Master, Dongfang Yu's strength must be unfathomable. Not to mention that I am only at the giant spirit realm. Even if I am at the true energy realm or the spirit wheel realm, I still have no hope of getting revenge in this lifetime, let alone within 3 years. I know that Mr. is comforting me. Being able to meet Mr. in this life is already a blessing from the heavens. As for revenge, no matter. No. Without waiting for Chiu Shan to finish, Nie Tian directly interrupted him and said sternly, I am not comforting you. What I said is the truth. What I said just now is my promise to you. Within 3 years, the transformation sect will definitely be removed from the 3,000 small worlds. Nie Tian's face was solemn, but Chiu Shan was shocked. He was even petrified for a few seconds before he came back to his senses. After a while, Chiu Shan finally calmed down a bit and finally said, Mr. Chiu Shan has a question in my heart. I don't know if I should ask. Ask away. Nie Tian faintly smiled. Chiu Shan took a deep breath and asked, Mister, are you a disciple of the 4 big families? What Nie Tian said just now and his expression just now showed that he did not put the transformation sect in his eyes at all. In the 3,000 small worlds, apart from the 4 big families, who would dare to do this? Therefore, Chiu Shan guessed that Nie Tian was very likely a disciple of the 4 big families, and his identity was not ordinary. I am not a disciple of the 4 big families. However, Nie Tian shook his head slightly and calmly said with a smile, I can't tell you what my identity is now. When the time is right, you will naturally know who I am. As for now, you only need to know that I have never put the 4 big families in my eyes. The deity transformation sect that you speak of is even more insignificant. Nie Tian did not lie, nor did he exaggerate. He really did not put the 4 big families in his eyes because the head of the Tang family, the head of the 4 big families, was only his youngest disciple. As for the transformation sect, it was even more of a trash force not worth mentioning. As long as Nie Tian was given a bit of time, he could casually step on it. Mister. Hearing what Nie Tian said, Chiu Shan's heart was in turmoil and his face was full of shock. If Nie Tian's words were heard by others, everyone would think that he was a madman or a fool who was talking nonsense. If it was anyone else who said this, Chiu Shan would definitely think that that person was farting. However, Nie Tian was different. Chiu Shan believed in Nie Tian. Chapter 190. The next morning, when the fiery red canopy of the eastern sky was slowly pushed over, a luxurious carriage with 2 dragon horses and 2 dragon horses was already parked outside Blue Cloud City. Wow! What a beautiful carriage! Nyeuro's crisp voice sounded. She was holding Nie Tian with one hand and holding Xiao Guai with the other. She looked very excited. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Ling Tang Yuyu, take Euro to the carriage first. I have a few words to say to President Jean. Chiu Ling and Tang Yuyu nodded and got into the carriage with Nyero. This time, Nie Tian was going to Heaven Luo City with Nyero, Chiu Ling and Tang Yuyu, Jean Debao, and Zhang Yifeng. Zhang Yifeng was now Nie Tian's personal disciple, so he naturally had to follow his teacher. Jean Debao's 3,000 demon god seal was only temporarily suppressed, so he had to follow Nie Tian. Jean Mingxin thought that Jean Debao following beside Nie Tian was absolutely beneficial to the latter, so of course he agreed. As for Qi Feng, he had to stay at Tyrant Cloud Academy. Rui Qianyu had left the academy and Fan Jinwu had been killed by Chiu Shan. Now, Tyrant Cloud Academy depended on Qi Feng. Nie Tian had originally planned to wait for Tang 13 to return before going to Heaven Luo City, but after what happened with Feng Wuk yesterday, he decided to go there now. Last night, Nie Tian had made a trip to Tyrant Cloud Academy, but he had not received any news about Rainy Thousand Leaf. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, and there was no trace of her at all. Mr. Nie, the journey to Heaven Luo City will be dangerous. Are you sure you don't need guards? Jean Mingxin asked. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, with Chiu Shan around, everything will be fine. Qiu Shan was now at the 4th tier of the giant spirit realm, and had cultivated saber heart. Ordinary warriors were no match for him. His strength alone was equivalent to 100 guards of the Jin residence. Jin Mingxin had seen Qiu Shan's strength with his own eyes, so he didn't say anything more. Big brother Qiu Shan, Mr. Nye, I really want to go to Heaven Luo City with you, but I can't leave Tyrant Cloud Academy. Qi Feng nodded, unable to hide the regret in his words. Principal Qi, it's good that you're staying in Tyrant Cloud Academy. If there's any news about Principal Yu, please inform me. She still owes me 10 days of cultivation, Nye Tian said with a smile. All right. Qi Feng agreed. Nye Tian then said to Jin Mingxin, President Jin, after I leave, if Tang 13 comes to find me, tell him that Tang Yu is fine and has gone to Heaven Luo City with me. Tell him to find me there. No problem. Jin Mingxin nodded with a smile. Of course, he knew Tang 13. When Tang 13 first came to the Jin mansion, the two of them fought. Nye Tian thought for a moment. There was nothing else, so he didn't delay any further. Qiu Shan and Nye Tian boarded the carriage and became the coachman. Jin Debao and Zhang Yifeng each rode a dragon horse. The carriage moved forward slowly. Jin Mingxin and Qi Feng stood and watched until the carriage completely disappeared. Only then did they return to Blue Cloud City. Heaven Luo City was a border city of the Blue Cloud Empire. It was 3,000 miles away from Blue Cloud City. Nye Tian and the others rode in the dragon horse carriage. Although the dragon horse was only a rank 1 spirit beast, it had strong endurance and fast speed. It could travel about 800 miles a day. If it traveled day and night, it would only take 2 or 3 days to reach Heaven Luo City. However, Nye Tian was not in a hurry. After all, Tang Yuyu had just recovered from a serious illness, and Nye Yuro rarely traveled long distances. Since it was such a long journey, it would not be a bad idea to let the girls enjoy the scenery. Nye Tian also took advantage of this time to draw star souls. Although it was important for him to improve his strength, it wasn't as important as star souls. Nye Tian was currently at the 1st level of Wanxiang, but even if his strength reached the 5th level, he might not be able to fight a giant spirit realm martial artist. A giant spirit realm martial artist had a giant spirit body. This was a qualitative leap compared to a Wanxiang spirit realm martial artist. If Nye Tian fought with a giant spirit realm martial artist now, he would most likely be injured. But if he had star souls, it would be different. He could give the enemy a fatal blow at a critical moment. Nye Tian discovered that any one of the star souls on the 3rd page could match the strength of a giant spirit realm martial artist. Last time, he used 3 star souls to break Gao Jin's corpse Luo demon body. It was truly powerful. One had to know that Gao Jin was a 5th level giant spirit realm martial artist. On the other hand, Nye Tian had to nurture a sword heart as soon as possible. As long as he did so, his strength would also soar. However, a swordsman nurturing a sword heart was different from a swordsman condensing sword qi. Nurturing a sword heart not only required outstanding talent in the sword Dao, but it also required a slow accumulation of sword qi, so it couldn't be rushed. Nurturing a sword heart was like a seed germinating. Even if the sword qi was dense, it still needed a certain amount of time. Qiu Shan, have you started cultivating the dragon whale's 7 breaths art that I taught you? On the carriage, Nye Tian asked. I've already started cultivating, Qiu Shan said as he drove the carriage. The dragon whale's 7 breaths art that Mr. taught me is truly mysterious. I only cultivated for 3 days and I can already feel my blade heart growing. It's simply too miraculous. Very good. Nye Tian nodded his head in satisfaction and said, The dragon whale's 7 breaths art is an ancient cultivation method. It imitates the breathing rhythm of the dragon whale in the deep sea. It is extremely beneficial for swordsmen and sabers in the sword Dao. If you concentrate on cultivating, in a few months there will definitely be results. The dragon whale's 7 breaths art was an ancient cultivation method. It was classified as an auxiliary cultivation method, and could greatly increase a martial artist's sword Dao realm. Generally speaking, swordsmen or sabers who cultivated the dragon whale's 7 breaths art could increase their sword Dao realm 7 times faster than ordinary people with the same talent in the sword Dao. In his previous life, Nie Tian cultivated the dragon whale's 7 breaths art, which was why he could become the youngest existence among the heaven realm's 5 great sword Dao. He saw that Qiu Shan's talent in the sword Dao was not bad, so he imparted the dragon whale's 7 breaths art to him. Moreover, the dragon whale's 7 breaths art had another use, which was to restrain one's aura and hide one's strength. The current Qiu Shan, unless it was a true element realm expert or a tier 4 alchemist, it would be very difficult for others to see through his strength. Qiu Shan's strength was too strong, so Nie Tian did not want others to pay attention to him. Along the way, although the journey was long, the 3 girls quarreled and got along harmoniously. They were not bored at all. 5 days later, Nie Tian and the others were finally not far from Heaven Luo City. They could already see Heaven Luo Mountain in the distance. A road that was several meters wide, winding like a long snake, led to Heaven Luo Mountain. In the evening, Nie Tian's carriage arrived at the foot of Heaven Luo Mountain. Get lost. At this time, on the road, a convoy of dozens of carriages came over, majestically, the driver of the carriages shouted. Nie Tian saw that these dozens of carriages, each one was carrying a large wooden box. The carriages sunk heavily, indicating that these wooden boxes were very heavy. It should be something like ores or crystals. Every carriage was guarded by more than a dozen martial artists, and it looked like they were on high alert. Nie Tian did not think too much and let Qiu Shan move the carriage to the side, making way for the other party. Country bumpkin, at least you know what's good for you. The martial artists in the convoy looked at Nie Tian and Qiu Shan with extremely unfriendly eyes, with an extremely contemptuous expression. Courting death. Qiu Shan stood up, wanting to flare up, but was stopped by Nie Tian. Chapter 191. However, Nie Tian's patience did not appease these warriors. Instead, it made them even more arrogant. A pile of dog **t. If you have the guts, come and hit me. A handsome young martial artist raised the long whip in his hand high up in the air, and said in an arrogant manner. Nie Tian's face darkened, then he smiled playfully and said, I've seen idiots, but I've never seen an idiot as arrogant as you. Stinking brat, you're courting death. The young warrior was very arrogant. Hearing Nie Tian call him an idiot, he directly raised the long whip in his hand. Nie Tian did not have the slightest reaction, but Qiu Shan, who was beside him, was ready. As long as this person's whip fell, his head would be separated from his body. Stop. At this moment, a middle-aged martial artist poked his head out of a carriage and roared loudly. Immediately, an air-braking force swept past and stopped the young martial artist. Father! The young warrior turned around and looked at his father with a puzzled expression. He did not know that if it was not his father but Qiu Shan, he would already be a corpse. Shut up! The middle-aged warrior walked out of the carriage and glared at his son. Immediately, he smiled at Nie Tian and said, Young master, my son was reckless and offended you. I apologize on his behalf. Please forgive me. Nie Tian saw that this person was still polite and did not want to cause more trouble. He smiled faintly and waved his hand, saying, It's okay. Father. The young warrior still wanted to say something. He looked at his father as if he did not understand why he was so polite to Nie Tian. Bastard! Get out of here! The middle-aged warrior glared at his son. Even though the latter was angry, he could only ride his horse and leave. I'll take my leave. The middle-aged warrior nodded slightly and went back into the carriage. The small disturbance ended just like that. The long convoy of carriages took a long time to pass, stirring up a cloud of dust on the road. Nie Tian watched the convoy gradually disappear. He had a strange feeling in his heart, as if he had missed something. "Boss, did something happen in Tianluo City?" Jean de Bao asked as he rode his horse over. Nie Tian was slightly taken aback. He did not quite understand what Jean de Bao meant. Jean de Bao chuckled and said, "Why do I feel like this fleet of carriages is like a large clan fleeing for their lives? Big carts and small carts, transporting away all their savings." Nie Tian nodded with a smile. From Jean de Bao's words, this group of carriages did indeed look like they were fleeing for their lives. The owner of this caravan should be someone from the royal family of Blue Cloud. He wouldn't be fleeing, Qiushan suddenly said with a smile. Someone from the royal family? Nie Tian was surprised and asked, "How do you know?" "Their carriages are flying the golden dragon flag. Doesn't that mean they're from the royal family?" Qiushan asked. Sigh. "It seems like it really is the golden dragon flag. Could that guy be Lan Bingchen's imperial uncle?" Jean de Bao laughed mischievously and said. He still remembered that Lan Bingchen once told Nie Tian that the current city lord of Tianluo City was his uncle, Lan Yunjiang. Moreover, Lan Bingchen had informed Lan Yunjiang in advance to leave the city lord's mansion for Nie Tian. Nie Tian's expression changed when he heard Qiushan and Jean de Bao's words. He immediately roared, "Qiushan, go stop that fleet of carriages!" "Okay." Qiushan immediately reacted. He didn't care why Nie Tian did this. He directly jumped off the carriage and disappeared in a flash. When a giant spirit realm martial artist ran at full speed, even a dragon horse couldn't compare. "Boss, what happened?" Jean de Bao couldn't help but ask when he saw Nie Tian's strange expression. Nie Tian didn't answer him. He only said, "Follow me." With these words, Nie Tian immediately drove the car and chased after them. Jean de Bao and Zhang Yifeng quickly followed. A few hundred meters away, the long fleet of carriages slowly moved forward. In one of the carriages, a figure poked his head out. It was the middle-aged martial artist from before. "Father, why didn't you let me kill that brat?" Outside the carriage, the young martial artist couldn't help but ask angrily. The middle-aged martial artist smiled coldly and said, "That brat's coachman isn't simple. He seems to have condensed a saber heart. If your whip had landed, you would probably be a corpse." The young martial artist saw his father's serious expression and knew that he wasn't joking. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He was shocked. The middle-aged martial artist suddenly looked back. His expression was slightly nervous. He said in his heart, "Why do I feel that brat is strange? Could he be the Nie Tian that His Majesty mentioned in the letter?" The middle-aged martial artist mentioned Nie Tian's name. He was none other than the previous city lord of Tianluo City, Lan Bingchen's uncle, Lan Yunjiang. And that young martial artist was his son, Lan Bingchen. His Majesty warned in the letter not to offend Nie Tian. What kind of person is this Nie Tian to make His Majesty so afraid of him? Lan Yunjiang muttered, but he didn't care much. After all, he had already left Tianluo City and wouldn't have anything to do with Nie Tian anymore. Lan Bingchen suddenly smiled and said, "Father, we have plundered all the valuables in Tianluo City. The new city lord wouldn't come looking for trouble, right?" Lan Yunjiang's face darkened. He scolded, Don't talk nonsense. These valuables belong to the city lord mansion. How could they be plundered?" Yes, father is right. I misspoke." Lan Bingchen quickly smiled, but his face was full of pride. It turned out that these dozens of carriages were the wealth of the people that Lan Yunjiang had plundered in Tianluo City for decades. Of course, he had to take them with him when he left Tianluo City. What's more, he even took away everything in the city lord mansion's treasury. He didn't leave anything for Nie Tian. Let the carriages speed up. We can only be at ease if we reach Lan Yunjiang as soon as possible." Lan Yunjiang said, and his head shrunk into the carriage. The carriages in front stop. However, at this moment, an explosive shout suddenly rang out. The guards of the carriages reacted and turned around, only to see a figure rushing over like a galloping beast. Qiu Shan's figure leaped and directly arrived at the front of the carriages, blocking the carriages. "Who dares?" One of the guards of the carriages saw that someone was blocking the road and shouted. But before he could finish speaking, he was so shocked that he stopped abruptly. Bang! Suddenly, edgeless desert blade appeared behind Qiu Shan, and he slashed towards a 100 meters tall tree that was tens of meters away. With just one slash, the 100 meters tall tree was actually chopped in half. A huge rumbling sound rang out, and dust flew up from the ground. All of the guards widened their eyes and looked at Qiu Shan. They simply didn't dare to believe their eyes, and their eyes were filled with fear. This move of Qiu Shan's was very effective. The guards of the carriages were all scared stiff, and the entire carriages were successfully stopped by him. When Lan Bingchen, who was in the middle of the carriages, saw this scene, his small face became deathly white. Chapter 192. The caravan was stopped by someone. Lan Yunjiang hurriedly walked out of the carriage. Seeing that it was Qiu Shan, he smiled apologetically and said, "Mister, this old man has already apologized on behalf of my son. Mister, why are you so persistent?" Qiu Shan didn't bother with him and said coldly, "Wait here. My master has something to ask you." Lan Yunjiang's heart sank. He felt that something bad was about to happen, but seeing Qiu Shan's stern expression, he didn't dare to speak again. A moment later, Nie Tian's carriage came over. "Are you in such a hurry to leave Heaven Luo City?" Lan Yunjiang. Nie Tian jumped off the carriage and looked at Lan Yunjiang with a playful expression. That's right, Nie Tian had already guessed Lan Yunjiang's identity. Fortunately, Jean de Bao and Qiu Shan reminded him in time. Jean de Bao said that Lan Yunjiang's carriage seemed to be fleeing, but Qiu Shan said that it was a royal carriage. Plus, Lan Bingchen once said that the previous city lord of Heaven Luo City was his uncle, Lan Yunjiang. Connecting these pieces of information, it wasn't hard to guess that the carriage in front of them was Lan Yunjiang's. Nie Tian also guessed that the wealth of this caravan belonged to the people of Heaven Luo City that Lan Yunjiang had plundered. Being called out by Nie Tian, Lan Yunjiang's heart sank, but he still maintained a calm expression and smiled. "Mister, do you know this old man? What a cunning old fox, still playing dumb at this moment." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "It's fine if you don't know me. You just need to know this." Saying so, Nie Tian took out the city lord's seal that Lan Bingchen gave him. "This brat really is Nie Tian." Lan Yunjiang's heart skipped a beat when he saw the city lord's seal. His expression also changed, but he quickly returned to normal and smiled apologetically. "So it's Mr. Nie Tian. His Majesty has already informed this old man. This old man will leave Heaven Luo City now. From now on, Heaven Luo City belongs to Mr. Nie Tian." Lan Bingchen had specifically warned Lan Yunjiang not to offend Nie Tian. Lan Yunjiang didn't know why Lan Bingchen, as the Emperor of Blue Cloud, would be so afraid of a city lord, but seeing how ruthless Qiu Shan was, he knew that Nie Tian wasn't someone to be trifled with. Nie Tian glanced at Lan Yunjiang, and then his gaze swept over the dozens of carriages. With a meaningful smile, he said, "Lan Yunjiang, you took so many treasures with you. Are you going to leave me with nothing in the city governor's mansion?" Although Nie Tian's gaze only swept past him, Lan Yunjiang was already drenched in cold sweat from fright. He didn't dare to look at Nie Tian directly. Before Lan Yunjiang could speak, Lan Binghua, who was behind him, spoke first. "Nie Tian, how dare you? Do you know who my father is?" At this time, Lan Binghua still didn't understand the situation at all. He roared, "My father is the uncle of the current emperor. How many lives do you have to talk to my father like this?" Nie Tian frowned slightly. He didn't even have the interest to watch Lan Binghua. This guy was too stupid. Nie Tian didn't want to talk to him at all. Using Lan Bingchen to threaten Nie Tian was as stupid as being born in the womb. Even if Lan Bingchen was here, he wouldn't dare to disobey Nie Tian in the slightest. You're courting death. At this time, Qiu Shan's figure moved. In the air, a blade aura broke through the air and attacked Lan Binghua. Bang! With a muffled sound, Lan Binghua was directly sent flying. After landing, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face immediately showed an abnormal expression of pain. Hua, are you okay? Lan Yunjiang suddenly turned around, and at the same time, his expression changed. Lan Binghua's expression was aghast. After a while, he reacted and wailed in pain. Father, my vital meridians have been destroyed. The group of guards looked at Qiu Shan in unison, their faces filled with unconcealable fear. Lan Binghua was also a fifth-tier all-manifestation martial artist, but his vital meridians were actually destroyed by a casual blade aura from Qiu Shan. How powerful was Qiu Shan's strength? He should be at the giant spirit realm at the very least. Nie Tian, what is the meaning of this? Lan Yunjiang asked the guards behind him to help Lan Binghua up. He looked at Nie Tian with a gloomy expression. After seeing his son crippled with his own eyes, if Lan Yunjiang didn't have the slightest bit of rationality left, he would have already pounced on Nie Tian and risked his life. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "Just now, I was just teaching your son a lesson. If it wasn't for Lan Bingchen, he would have died a long time ago." People like Lan Binghua were used to being arrogant and wanted to kill at the slightest provocation. Just now, Nie Tian had only said one sentence to him, and he wanted to kill. With such a ruthless and bloodthirsty temperament, destroying his vital meridians was already the lightest punishment. When Lan Yunjiang saw Nie Tian's calm expression, he couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Nie Tian actually called Lan Bingchen by his name. From this, it could be seen that he didn't care about the latter at all. Lan Yunjiang was an old fox and very shrewd. At a time like this, he actually suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "You've already vented my anger by crippling my son. This old man will take his leave." Take his leave? Nie Tian couldn't help but laugh. This old fox really knew how to act. He actually wanted to just leave. If Nie Tian only wanted to vent his anger on Lan Binghua, he would have done so earlier. Why did he have to go through so much trouble to stop the convoy? Jean de Bao chuckled and said, "Old fox, you really know how to joke. Could it be that my boss went through so much trouble to stop your convoy just to vent his anger on that useless son of yours? Don't fucking play dumb. These dozens of carriages are all Heaven Luo City's property. Don't even think about taking any of it away." Of course, Jean de Bao wasn't stupid. He had already figured out what was going on. Lan Yunjiang was really black-hearted. Even Jean de Bao, the son of the richest man in the imperial city, was shocked by these dozens of carriages. Jean de Bao didn't know that these were the property that Lan Yunjiang had plundered for decades as the city lord. This time, when he returned to Blue Cloud City, he wanted to take it all away. He didn't expect to meet Nie Tian on the way. "This is my personal property. Why can't I take it away?" Lan Yunjiang roared and subconsciously took a step forward. Personal property? Nie Tianling sneered. Was Lan Yunjiang lying to a ghost? How could a small city lord have so many personal property? Even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe him. Nie Tian didn't waste time with Lan Yunjiang and said, "I don't care what kind of property it is. In any case, it was taken from Heaven Luo City. Now we have to take it back to Heaven Luo City. Anyone who wants to stop us will be killed without mercy." "Nie Tian, you dare." Lan Yunjiang was forced into a corner. This was his accumulation for decades. How could he just let someone snatch it away? "You can try?" Nie Tian smiled sinisterly. If Lan Yunjiang dared to make any strange moves, Nie Tian didn't mind sending him on his way. He didn't care if the latter was an imperial uncle or not. Nie Tian nodded at Qiu Shan. The latter understood and shouted, "Everyone, listen up. Turn around immediately and return to Heaven Luo City." His thunderous voice resounded in everyone's heart. The group of guards subconsciously glanced at blue ice transformation. Then, they moved and began to slowly turn the carriages around. Qiu Shan dared to destroy blue ice transformation, let alone others. Chapter 193. Lan Yunjiang was very cunning, and he suddenly attacked Nie Tian. Qiu Shan was too strong, and Lan Yunjiang couldn't afford to provoke him. However, Nie Tian was only at the first level of the All Creations realm. Once he controlled Nie Tian, Qiu Shan naturally wouldn't dare to act rashly. Lan Yunjiang was at the 9th level of the All Creations realm, and he was very confident that he could control Nie Tian in an instant. However, he was completely wrong. Although Nie Tian was only at the first level of the All Creations realm, his true battle strength far surpassed that of the first level of the All Creations realm. Unless it was a giant spirit realm martial artist, there were very few martial artists who could fight against Nie Tian head-on. Boom! Lan Yunjiang's 5 fingers formed a claw, and a sharp claw shadow attacked Nie Tian's neck in the air. Nie Tian didn't panic and directly punched out. In the next moment, Lan Yunjiang felt a huge force and his body sank. He flew out and smashed heavily on the ground. Hiss! Everyone gasped and stared at Nie Tian with their eyes wide open, unable to believe the scene in front of them. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that a first level of the All Creations realm martial artist could casually send a 9th level martial artist flying with a punch? Lan Yunjiang sprang to his feet and stared at Nie Tian in disbelief. He never thought that he would be sent flying by a first level of the All Creations realm martial artist. What the hell? Nie Tian, I'm the Emperor's uncle. How dare you hit me? Do you still have His Majesty in your eyes? Lan Yunjiang shouted after calming down. Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, Go back and ask Lan Bingqian. Even if I have him in my eyes, would he dare to stand in front of me? You! Lan Yunjiang's face froze. He couldn't help but shiver, and he couldn't say anything. Get lost! Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore and shouted in a deep voice. Lan Yunjiang looked at Nie Tian with hatred, and he seemed to be hesitating. My master told you to get lost. Didn't you hear him? Qiu Shan's deep voice rang out. At the same time, a huge, edgeless broadsword that was dozens of meters long appeared behind him. Giant Spirit Realm. Lan Yunjiang's face paled. He immediately recognized that the blade on Qiu Shan's back was the giant spirit true body. The other warriors all felt a chill run down their spines. They rejoiced in their hearts that they hadn't attacked Qiu Shan. Previously, these guards had looked down on Qiu Shan and the others, calling them country bumpkins. But who would have thought that these country bumpkins were actually giant spirit realm martial practitioners? Lan Yunjiang's expression was complicated and resentful. Looking at Qiu Shan's giant spirit avatar, he no longer had the slightest intention to resist. He knew that he wasn't Qiu Shan's match, so he could only grit his teeth and sigh before leaving with Lan Bing. Nie Tian, when I return to Blue Cloud City, I must personally ask His Majesty who you are, Lan Yunjiang said to himself as he left. How could Nie Tian not know what this old fox was thinking? However, the answer he got from Lan Bingqian would only make him more shocked. Lan Yunjiang father and son limped away, cutting a sorry figure. Nie Tian looked at the convoy in front of him, and could not help being surprised in his heart. There are 4 to 5 large chests in each carriage. Even if the chests are all filled with gold coins, this money must be at least in the hundreds of millions. Inside these chests were clearly not just gold coins. There were definitely also essence crystals, medicinal herbs, spirit weapons, and other precious treasures and the like. One had to admit that Nie Tian really struck it rich this time. With this huge sum of money, Nie Tian could do many things. You're all Heaven Luo City's guards, right? Nie Tian swept his gaze over all the guards and asked in a loud voice. This convoy was filled with valuables and no family members. Presumably, Lan Yunjiang already let his family members leave in advance. Replying to City Lord, this lowly one is Heaven Luo City's guard deputy commander, Gao Han. We're all Heaven Luo City's guards. One of the martial artists stepped forward and said with a bow. Gao Han. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He scanned Gao Han with his divine sense and discovered that he was at the 9th level of the all-creation realm, which was not bad. Nie Tian then asked, "Where's your commander?" "City Lord, the commander, he." Gao Han hesitated for a moment, but still said, "Lan Binghua, who was crippled just now, is our commander." Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Lan Binghua, who was crippled by Qiushan just now, was only at the 5th level of the all-creation realm, while Gao Han was at the 9th level of the all-creation realm. However, Lan Binghua was actually a guard commander, while Gao Han was only a deputy commander. This made people feel strange. These two people's positions should be swapped. However, Nie Tian suddenly thought of Lan Binghua's identity and immediately understood. He was the City Lord's son. Even if his strength was not good, being a guard commander was nothing. Very good. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and said, "I'm the new City Lord of Heaven Luo City, Nie Tian. From now on, all of you will be loyal to me. Your subordinate pays respect to the City Lord." Gao Han knelt on one knee and said loudly, "Your subordinate pays respect to the City Lord." Gao Han bowed to Nie Tian. The other guards didn't dare to be negligent and knelt down together, looking rather imposing. These guard strengths were all between the 5th and 9th level of the all-creation realm. With Qiushan around, how would they dare to disobey Nie Tian? Moreover, Nie Tian had the City Lord's seal in his hands, so he was the City Lord to begin with. Nie Tian let these people stand up, then said to Qiushan, "Qiushan, I'll leave these people to you. From now on, you will be the guard commander of Heaven Luo City." "Yes," Qiushan replied respectfully. "Your subordinate pays respect to the Lord Commander." Gao Han hurriedly bowed to Qiushan. Qiushan nodded and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, listen up. Return to Heaven Luo City immediately." "Yes." All the martial artists answered and began to get busy. The huge convoy started moving slowly. Heaven Luo City was already right in front of them. As long as they passed through Heaven Luo Mountain, they would be able to reach it. However, it was already nighttime and the sky was getting dark. The mountain range was covered in trees and spirit beasts ran amok, so there might be danger. Gao Han rode his horse forward, walked to Nie Tian's side and said, "City Lord, it's getting late and Heaven Luo Mountain is extremely dangerous. Why don't we wait until tomorrow morning to cross the mountain?" After seeing Nie Tian's methods, Gao Han had already acknowledged Nie Tian's identity as the City Lord. Nie Tian looked at the dark Heaven Luo Mountain and said disapprovingly, "Heaven Luo Mountain isn't big, and the spirit beasts inside are at most rank 3. There shouldn't be any danger." The Heaven Luo Mountain in front of them had a circumference of less than 50 kilometers, so there definitely wouldn't be any high-rank spirit beasts inside. Even if there was danger, it wasn't within Nie Tian's scope of consideration. Gao Han suddenly looked awkward. He hesitated for a moment, but he still said, "City Lord, you've just arrived at Heaven Luo City, so you might not know this, but there is a group of fierce bandits living on Heaven Luo Mountain. They specialize in robbing passers-by's belongings. If we cross the mountain with great fanfare at this time, we'll definitely alarm them. I'm afraid there will be some trouble then." Fierce bandits. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up, and he asked in a deep voice, "Since you know that there are fierce bandits on Heaven Luo Mountain, why aren't you exterminating them?" "City Lord, this group of fierce bandits are very strong, and they—" Gao Han's expression became even uglier, and he started to stutter. "If you have something to say, just say it." Nie Tian didn't want to waste time and said sternly. Gao Han didn't dare to hide anything anymore and said, "The leader of the fierce bandits and the previous City Lord are sworn brothers, and every time they rob, A portion of the belongings would be given to the city lord mansion, so. Chapter 194. Nye Tian didn't think that Lan Yunjiang, as the lord of Tianluo City, would actually collude with bandits and engage in robbery. It had to be said that this was indeed a good way to make money. No wonder he could accumulate so much wealth. But unfortunately, all these riches were taken by Nye Tian. Gao Han, how strong are the bandits of Tianluo Mountain? Nye Tian originally wanted to enter the mountain directly, but he remembered that he had so many riches with him. Most importantly, Nye Yuro and the others were also there, so he had to be more cautious. Gao Han bowed and replied, "This group of bandits has about 50 to 60 people. The leader is a first-level giant spirit martial artist called Peng Shi. The other bandits are all between the 5th and 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. A bandit with the strength of a giant spirit. Not simple." Nye Tian smiled faintly and said to Qiushan, "Let's enter the mountain." Knowing the strength of this group of bandits, Nye Tian didn't have anything to worry about and prepared to enter the mountain immediately. Gao Han still wanted to dissuade him, but when he saw Nye Tian's calm appearance, he swallowed his words. Since Nye Tian dared to enter the mountain, he naturally had enough confidence. This group of bandits better not appear. Otherwise, Nye Tian wouldn't mind directly exterminating them. A mere first-level giant spirit martial artist was nothing in Nye Tian's eyes. Although he was full of confidence, Nye Tian secretly reminded Qiushan to be careful after entering the mountain and protect Nye Yuro and the others' carriages. The carriages moved forward slowly and soon entered the deep, dark mountain forest. Just as the carriages entered the mountain forest, two figures appeared again. It was Lan Yunjiang and his son. "Father, are we really going back?" Lan Binghua's little face was pale, and his eyes were filled with fear. "I'm going to see Peng Shi. We definitely can't let Nye Tian return to Tianluo City." Lan Yunjiang's face was sinister as he said through gritted teeth. Originally, he wanted to go back to Lan Yun City directly. However, he couldn't let go of so many treasures. Those were the things he had accumulated for decades. How could he just give them away? Lan Yunjiang said, "The carriages are moving slowly. Let's take a detour and enter the mountain. As long as we find Peng Shi, I don't believe that Nye Tian will be able to walk out of Tianluo Mountain alive." As he spoke, the killing intent on Lan Yunjiang's face could no longer be concealed. Two figures disappeared into the forest under the cover of the night. After entering the forest, the speed of the caravan became even slower. After all, it was already night time. The forest was deep and dark, and the light was very weak. Gao Han was leading the way, and Nye Tian was riding a horse beside him. Qiushan continued to be the coachman. According to Nye Tian's instructions, no matter what happened later, he would not leave the carriage. His mission was to protect Nye Yuro and the others. In the forest, the light grew dimmer. The surrounding giant trees were like giant beasts lurking in the night, ready to pounce on them at any moment. The air was suffused with a murderous and strange atmosphere, causing all the cultivators to shut their mouths and remain silent. "Lord Governor, Tianluo City is not far from here. In at most an hour we will be able to leave the mountain." Gao Han couldn't help but feel a little happy and complacent. Nye Tian nodded with a smile on the surface, but he didn't relax at all. He remained vigilant. Soon, the caravan arrived at a dark valley. "Stop!" Nye Tian vaguely heard a low voice coming from the valley. He immediately waved his hand, signaling for the caravan to stop. "Lord Governor, what's the matter?" Gao Han didn't understand and couldn't help but ask. The others also didn't know what was going on, but they all revealed nervous expressions. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said in a loud voice, "After walking for so long, my brothers must be tired. Let's rest here for a while." "Rest here?" Gao Han was stunned. He wanted to say something, but Nye Tian glared at him and he swallowed his words. The others also had some complaints. They didn't understand why Nye Tian would suddenly rest here. At this moment they were in the middle of Tianluo Mountain, which was extremely dangerous. Why would they choose to rest here? Was there something wrong with their brains? However, Nye Tian was the lord of the city and his strength was very strange. Even if they had doubts, they didn't dare to show it. Nye Tian didn't care about them. He walked over to Qiu Shan and said, "I will go to the valley in front to take a look. You stay here and protect the girls." "Sir, don't worry." Qiu Shan knew that Nye Tian must have discovered something, so he nodded and agreed. Nye Tian turned around and said to Gao Han, "Gao Han, follow me to the valley in front to take a look." Yes. Even though Gao Han had doubts, he didn't dare to disobey Nye Tian. Moreover, he also wanted to see what tricks this new lord of the city was playing. Nye Tian just smiled faintly, jumped off the horse and walked forward. When they arrived at the entrance of the valley, Nye Tian spread out his spiritual force. At this moment, his perception was raised to the extreme. At this time, Nye Tian's spiritual force had reached the 42nd level, slightly higher than before. Even in this deep valley, he could see the wind blowing and grass moving within a kilometer. He just heard a faint whisper. Although it wasn't loud, he was sure it wasn't an illusion. Other warriors, including Qiu Shan, couldn't possibly detect such a slight movement. "HM?" After a moment, Nye Tian suddenly frowned and let out a low cry. There seemed to be a convoy in the valley, and it stopped as if it had encountered some obstacle. "Lord, what's wrong?" Gao Han saw that Nye Tian's expression was strange and couldn't help but become nervous. Nye Tian signaled Gao Han to not make a sound. Then, he pointed with his finger and entered the valley. Gao Han followed closely beside Nye Tian, his nerves stretched taut, not daring to be careless. The two of them entered the valley, and a moment later, they saw a convoy stop in the middle of the valley. Looking at the exit in front of them, it was actually blocked by a huge rock. From afar, Nye Tian saw a flag fluttering in the middle of the convoy. On it were the two words Duan, so he asked, "Gao Han, do you know who this convoy belongs to?" Gao Han's face was filled with shock. He looked suspiciously at Nye Tian as if asking, "How did you know there were people in the valley?" Gao Han reacted, and when he saw the flag, his expression changed and he said in shock, "This is the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy." Diyuan Chamber of Commerce? Nye Tian was slightly taken aback, not understanding why Gao Han would be so frightened. Gao Han hurriedly said, "Lord, the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce is one of the 7 top chambers of the 3,000 Small Worlds Martial Commerce Union. Its power is comparable to a first-rate empire. A top chamber of commerce in the Martial Commerce Union, it was no wonder that Gao Han was so frightened. Nye Tian had heard Jin Mingxin mention the Martial Commerce Union before, an enormous organization comparable to the Alchemist Guild. The Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce was a small branch of the Martial Commerce Union, but compared to the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, it was far inferior. The Diyuan Chamber of Commerce was one of the 7 top chambers of commerce in the Martial Commerce Union, and its power far surpassed the average second-rate empire, even comparable to a first-rate empire. Chapter 195. Nye Tian released his mental energy and divine sense, only to discover that there were no experts in the convoy. The strongest person was only a martial artist at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. The rest were all around the 5th level of the Wanxiang realm. This kind of strength doesn't match the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's name. Nye Tian was puzzled. "City Lord, let's hurry over and see what's going on?" Gao Han was very nervous and wanted to go over, but he was stopped by Nye Tian. Gao Han looked at Nye Tian suspiciously and said, "City Lord, the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce cannot afford to offend us. If something happens to their convoy in Tianluo Mountain, our Tianluo city will not be able to escape responsibility." "Don't worry." Nye Tian pointed above the valley with a calm expression. He had already discovered that the real danger did not come from the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, but was hidden above the valley. Gao Han immediately understood and said with a horrified expression, "City Lord, could it be that someone wants to ambush the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce?" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just when Gao Han's words had yet to finish, a sharp whistling sound suddenly rang out. In the air, fire arrows were like rain, drawing countless lines of fire in the air. Without warning, they shot down from above the valley, flashing across the sky and shooting towards the convoy. "There's someone above. There's a surprise attack, be careful." F***CK, it's an armor-piercing arrow. The Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy was in chaos, and panicked shouts rose and fell. However, Nie Tian was unfazed. He looked at the scene in front of him calmly, not in a hurry to show himself. Right now, the ambushers above the valley had the absolute initiative. If they rushed out immediately, they would be skinned even if they didn't die under such dense fire arrows. Seeing that Nie Tian didn't move, Gao Han naturally didn't dare to move either. He could only watch the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's people scream in pain. Just as the sneak attack began, there were still some rational people in the Chamber of Commerce who took out a flame bomb and squeezed it lightly. After an explosion, a ball of scarlet fire soared into the sky and instantly dispersed in the air. It was very dazzling. "This is the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's distress signal." Gao Han was quite shocked, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. If something happened to the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy in Tianluo Mountain, Tianluo City, and even the entire Lanyan Empire would be in trouble. Right at this moment, the fire arrow landed, and screams of pain rang out incessantly. After a short while, the fire arrows ended. The dozens of guards of the Great Yuan Chamber of Commerce had suffered heavy casualties and had practically lost all ability to resist. "Don't panic, everyone. I've already sent out a distress signal. Our people will come from Heaven Luo City as reinforcements soon." The leader of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy, Ding Xiaofeng, shouted loudly. At the same time, his gaze fell on the carriage in the middle of the convoy, and he subconsciously stood guard beside it. "Reinforcement?" Ding Xiaofeng's words had just sounded when a ferocious and wild laughter immediately sounded. Immediately, dozens of black-clothed figures leaped down from above the valley. "Are you still waiting for reinforcements to arrive?" The leader of the black-robed men smiled coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. Ding Xiaofeng looked at the black-clothed men in front of him, and was actually still able to maintain his calm. Stepping forward, he cupped his hands and said, "Friends, we are the Yuan Merchant Association. Kill them! Leave no one alive!" Before Ding Xiaofeng could finish his words, the leader of the black-clothed men roared. Yes, the dozens of black-clothed men roared in unison, and in the next moment, they charged towards the convoy. The dozens of black-clothed men attacked at the same time. Ding Xiaofeng was so scared that his face turned pale. As he retreated, his eyes were filled with despair. The strength of these black-clothed men was very strong. None of them were weaker than him, and the leader was even more valiant. He seemed to already have the strength of a giant spirit realm. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. 300 billion sword shadows! Nie Tian roared loudly. Without hesitation, the heaven-sword let out a cold sword cry. Immediately after, dozens of sword shadows whizzed out and attacked the black-clothed men. Bang, bang, bang! A series of explosions sounded. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, the black-clothed men were actually repelled. Seeing this, Gao Han broke out in cold sweat. Nie Tian only had the strength of a Wanxiang first level, and the power of this sword was even comparable to a giant spirit realm martial artist. All the black-clothed men turned around at the same time. When they saw Nie Tian's face clearly, they were all shocked. They didn't expect that the one who repelled them with a sword was actually a young man. However, Nie Tian ignored them. He saw Ding Xiaofeng and the others surrounding a carriage. At first glance, there seemed to be nothing unusual on the carriage, and it was no different from the other carriages. However, Nie Tian could see that there was a box on the carriage, and there was actually a rank 3 restrictive spiritual formation on it. It seemed that there was something extremely valuable inside, or something very terrifying. What on earth is so important to them? Nie Tian frowned slightly, feeling puzzled. However, now was not the time to think about this. He had to first get rid of these troublesome black-clothed men. Stinking brat, who are you? Seeing that Nie Tian's strength was strange, the leader of the black-clothed men shouted loudly. There was some vigilance in his eyes. However, Nie Tian ignored him. Instead, he set his gaze on a black-clothed man beside him and said with a faint smile, Lan Yunjiang, I spared your life, but I didn't expect that you would run back to die yourself. Then, don't blame me. Nie Tian saw at a glance that the person beside the black-clothed men's leader was none other than Lan Yunjiang. He didn't expect that Lan Yunjiang would actually dare to come back. This old fellow was definitely unwilling to give away so many treasures with both hands, so he ran back on his own. Lan Yunjiang really lived up to the saying, humans die in pursuit of wealth, while birds die in pursuit of food. Nie Tian, do you think you can leave here alive? Seeing that his identity was exposed, Lan Yunjiang no longer concealed himself. He tore off his black clothes and said coldly. Originally, Lan Yunjiang wanted to wait until he dealt with the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's people before looking for Nie Tian. He didn't expect that Nie Tian would deliver himself to his doorstep. Moreover, it was only him and Gao Han. The most troublesome Qiushan wasn't here. This was really a heaven-sent opportunity. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said to the black-clothed men's leader, You're Peng Shi, right? Ha ha. Stinking brat, you still know this lord's great name? Then obediently accept your death. Peng Shi laughed wildly, completely disregarding Nie Tian. Gao Han, aren't you going to come over? Lan Yunjiang suddenly looked at Gao Han with a malicious gaze and shouted. Gao Han's entire body trembled. He wanted to walk over, but it was as if 10,000 tons of lead sand had been poured into his legs, causing him to be unable to move even a single step. He turned around to look at Nie Tian, and actually felt a domineering confidence from the latter. Immediately, he steadied his heart and roared, Lan Yunjiang, you colluded with bandits and robbed the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce. Your crimes cannot be forgiven. Today, I will execute you on the spot. Lan Yunjiang was stunned, as if he didn't know Gao Han. He didn't expect that Gao Han, who was usually a yes-man to him, would suddenly become so courageous and actually dare to say such words. Nie Tian nodded slightly, satisfied with Gao Han's performance. Chapter 196. Humph! Peng Shi knew that his identity had been exposed and sneered. Immediately, a terrifying aura surged out as he smiled eerily. Since you already know who I am, then all of you shall die here. With just you? Nie Tian smiled faintly, his expression indifferent as if he did not care at all. Here, only Peng Shi had the strength of a level 1 spirit warrior, and only he made Nie Tian slightly apprehensive. The others did not pose any threat to Nie Tian at all. Little bastard, this lord will tear you apart. Peng Shi roared angrily, his entire body boiling with anger. Even his hair stood up, making him look like an enraged lion. Die for me. With a punch, Peng Shi directly attacked Nie Tian. A terrifying aura condensed into a golden lion claw in the air, grabbing at Nie Tian. City Lord, be careful! Gao Han cried out, fearing that something would happen to Nie Tian. Facing Peng Shi's fatal punch, the corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled into a strange smile. His feet stepped out in a strange manner, circulating all the essence energy in his body to the limit. Immediately, he stabbed out with his sword, shocking sword aura spreading several meters away. Bang! With a muffled sound, the sword aura surged and directly broke the golden lion claw, forcing Peng Shi to retreat repeatedly in a sorry state. Everyone stared wide-eyed at the scene before them in disbelief. Who would have thought that a level 1 manifestation martial artist could actually repel a level 1 spirit warrior? What a powerful sword aura! Ding Xiaofeng of the Dayuan Trading Association saw some clues and had a look of shock. It turned out that Ding Xiaofeng was also a swordsman and had even nurtured a sword heart. It was precisely because of this that Ding Xiaofeng often boasted about how his sword Dao aptitude was. But now that he saw Nie Tian, he realized that his sword Dao aptitude was simply trash. Ding Xiaofeng could feel that Nie Tian's sword aura was very terrifying. Among all the swordsmen he had encountered, he had never seen such a terrifying sword aura. He even felt that Nie Tian could contend with him, a sword heart swordsman, just by relying on sword aura alone. Ding Xiaofeng still had some self-awareness. Nie Tian currently possessed 2 types of sword qi, proud sword qi and astral soul sword qi. To put it bluntly, any kind of sword qi was enough to resist Ding Xiaofeng's sword heart. Nie Tianling looked coldly at the shocked Peng Shi and said, "You're no match for me without using the giant spirit true body." Although Peng Shi was a first-level giant spirit warrior, he was still not a match for Nie Tian without using his giant spirit true body. "Little bastard, you're courting death." Using the giant spirit true body against a first-tier Wanxiang martial artist was simply an insult. However, Peng Shi couldn't care less at this moment. With a furious roar, the giant spirit true body appeared behind him. Behind Peng Shi, a huge lion that was 30 to 40 meters long appeared. The turtle-striped wild lion was Peng Shi's origin spirit. The strangest thing was that the turtle-striped wild lion's entire body was covered in black stripes, appearing abnormally ruthless. Roar! The turtle-striped wild lion opened its bloody mouth and roared towards the sky. The surrounding air was filled with the stench of blood. Many people couldn't withstand the powerful aura of the turtle-striped wild lion and couldn't help but retreat. "Attack! Kill them!" Peng Shi roared and ordered the black-clothed men to attack. The black-clothed men immediately started fighting with Gao Han, Ding Xiaofeng, and the others. Battle cries shook the sky. Nie Tian didn't have the time to pay attention to the others. All his attention was focused on Peng Shi. Nie Tian had to be very careful when fighting against a giant spirit realm martial artist without an astral soul. "Die!" Peng Shi roared. His eyes were filled with disdain and doubt. The turtle-striped wild lion's giant spirit true body lifted its front claw and smashed it down. It was like a mountain had suddenly collapsed, and the aura coming from it was frightening. Nie Tian didn't dare to face it head-on. He fiercely stomped on the ground and his body shifted dozens of meters. Then, he soared into the sky. The proud sword Heavenly Wings appeared on his back, and the heaven-beheading sword in his hand let out a long cry. Sword light gushed out. It was 10 meters long and turned into a huge sword shadow. It pierced through the air and attacked one of the turtle-striped wild lion's eyes. Seeing Nie Tian's sword attack, the disdain in Peng Shi's eyes disappeared and was replaced with fear. He wanted to react, but it was already too late. The sword light in the berserk turtle-striped lion's eyes suddenly enlarged, and soon after, it struck. Puff! The sound of flesh being cut rang out. The sword light actually pierced into the turtle-striped wild lion's eye. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Ah! A sudden sharp pain spread throughout his body. Peng Shi immediately let out a hysterical howl. One of his eyes had been destroyed by Nie Tian. The Yuan spirit and the martial artist's soul were connected. If the Yuan spirit was injured, the martial artist's body would also be injured. Peng Shi retreated several steps. The turtle-striped wild lion stomped on the ground, causing the entire valley to shake and several pits to appear on the ground. Nie Tian shook the proud sword Heavenly Wings and maintained his body in midair. The corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. He was very satisfied with his previous attack. With his current strength, it was impossible to break through the turtle-striped wild lion's defense. However, the eye was different. It was the weakest part of the turtle-striped wild lion's defense, and could be easily broken through. Ah! Ping Shi roared furiously as he looked at Nie Tian in the air, but his eyes were already filled with fear. On the other side, Gao Han, Ding Xiaofeng, and the guards of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce were forced to retreat and hide beside the carriage. Gao Han also noticed that Ding Xiaofeng seemed to be desperately protecting the carriage beside him. It seemed that there was something very important inside. Boom! Boom! The two men in black attacked at the same time. Two sharp waves of qi whistled towards Ding Xiaofeng. Ding Xiaofeng did not dodge. He stood beside the carriage and stabbed out with his sword. Although he was not weak, he was still sent flying by the joint attack of the two men. After landing on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the next moment, Ding Xiaofeng crawled up and looked at the carriage with a face full of fear. The two men in black also noticed that something was wrong. They chuckled and walked into the carriage step by step. "Don't come near." At this time, Ding Xiaofeng, who knows where he got the strength from, suddenly leaped up, his long sword thrusting high up in the air. It was actually a desperate attack. Pooh! One of the men in black was caught off guard and was hit by the sword qi. Pierced through his chest and he died on the spot. The other man in black was quite frightened. He took a few steps back and looked at Ding Xiaofeng in fear. Seeing this, Gao Han could not help but wonder what was on the carriage that made Ding Xiaofeng risk his life to protect it. In fact, Ding Xiaofeng did not know what was on the carriage. He only knew that there was a box on the carriage. This box was something that the young master had ordered him to protect. If anything were to happen to it, the whole caravan would be in trouble. Just as the bloody battle in the valley continued, Qiu Shan, who was waiting outside the valley, arrived at the entrance. He waited for a long time for Nie Tian to return. He was worried and brought the caravan to the entrance of the valley. Hearing the tragic battle cries in the valley, Qiu Shan's heart sank. In the next moment, he drove the carriage straight into the valley. Chapter 197. In the valley, the bloody battle had reached its climax. At this moment, something strange happened. Boom! With a loud noise, the boulder blocking the valley flew up, as if a huge force had surged out from the ground and lifted the boulder up. The next moment, a shocking scene appeared. Whoosh! A giant hand formed from black sand suddenly appeared in the air. It grabbed the boulder and threw it out like a shot put. The boulder was thrown thousands of meters away, drawing a beautiful arc in the air before crashing to the ground. Boom! The boulder fell to the ground and the earth shook. The surrounding trees were smashed to pieces, and a huge pit appeared in the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Their expressions were stiff, and they were dumbfounded. Nie Tian could not help but be stunned. The boulder was dozens of meters in circumference, and was roughly estimated to be at least 800,000 kilograms, if not 500,000 kilograms. The newcomer could actually lift the boulder like a toy. This strength alone was enough to shock everyone. Nie Tian's strength was at the first tier of the all-creation realm, and he had awakened 1,024 star power stars in his body. However, the absolute strength that he could unleash was only about 400,000 jin. Even if he used martial techniques, it would only be 250,000 jin. He was completely unable to contend against this person. 500,000 kilograms of strength. Could it be that the newcomer is a true energy realm martial artist? Nie Tian asked in surprise. Just as everyone was shocked, the giant black sand hand in the air disappeared, and a figure appeared in front of everyone. Young Master! Ding Xiaofeng was the first to react, and he shouted excitedly at the newcomer. Actually, when the giant black sand hand appeared, Ding Xiaofeng already knew that the young master of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, Ding Yifan, had arrived. However, Ding Xiaofeng did not expect that his flame bomb would cause the young master of the Chamber of Commerce, Ding Yifan, to personally come as reinforcements. It seemed that the contents of the carriage box were very important. Otherwise, Ding Yifan would not have been alerted to come as reinforcements. Ding Xiaofeng's curiosity was aroused, and he wanted to see what was in the box. However, he only thought about it. Even if Ding Yifan opened the box for him to see, he would not dare to look. Ding Xiaofeng knew that it was better not to know some things. Once he knew, he would not live long. Nie Tian looked at Ding Yifan and frowned slightly. This was a young man around 17 or 18 years old. He was dressed in white and looked very handsome. However, his face was cold and his eyes were gloomy. It was obvious that he wasn't someone who was easy to get along with. What made Nie Tian even more surprised was that Ding Yifan's strength was actually only at the giant spirit first level. Being able to explode with a strength of 1,000,000 pounds at the first level of the giant spirit realm was truly terrifying. It looks like your Yuan spirit is a spirit. Is it a mass of black sand? Or is it something that can control sand? Nie Tian saw Ding Yifan's black sand hand and guessed. Holy shit, he's the young master of the Deyuan Trading Company, Ding Yifan. He really is a freak. Gao Han reacted as well and couldn't help but click his tongue. You know him? Nie Tian came to Gao Han's side and asked. Since Ding Yifan was here, then he would let them handle the rest. Nie Tian didn't want to intervene anymore. Gao Han said softly, City Lord, this Ding Yifan is amazing. He is an outstanding figure of our Nanshan region's young generation. He is a super genius ranked 11th on the Nanshan region Martial Union's genius list. The 3,000 small worlds were divided into 4 regions. Nie Tian was currently in one of the 4 regions, the Nanshan region. Qiushan's enemy, the Transformation God sect, was one of the top forces in the Nanshan region. The Martial Union's genius list had a genius list for each region. It only recorded young martial artists under the age of 30. Those who could enter the top 100 of the genius list were all top geniuses. Not to mention Ding Yifan, who was ranked 11th on the genius list. Super genius? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said in his heart, in this world, no one dares to call themselves a genius in front of me, let alone a super genius. However, Ding Yifan was able to explode with a strength of 1,000,000 pounds at the first level of the giant spirit realm. This was not easy. Nie Tian watched quietly. He wanted to see how Ding Yifan would deal with the situation in front of him. Ding Yifan's arrival directly stopped the bloody battle. Ping Shi was so scared that his face turned pale. His knees couldn't help but tremble. He never thought that casually robbing a caravan would actually provoke Ding Yifan. The original Ping Shi thought that this was just an ordinary caravan of Deyuan Merchant Association. Even if they were robbed, Deyuan Merchant Association would only blame it on Heaven Luo City. In any case, Heaven Luo City had changed to a new city lord. He didn't care. Who would have thought that Ding Yifan would actually personally appear for such an unremarkable caravan? It was too strange. You are the one who robbed Deyuan Merchant Association's caravan? Ding Yifan stood on top of a big rock and looked down at Ping Shi. His tone was cold to the point that it was suffocating. I. Ping Shi's teeth were trembling. His back was full of cold sweat. He couldn't even speak properly. Those who touch Deyuan Merchant Association die. Ding Yifan didn't plan to let Ping Shi finish speaking. With a deep roar, a clump of black sand flew out and transformed into a black claw. The claw directly grabbed onto Ping Shi's neck and lifted him into the air. Ping Shi actually didn't have the slightest bit of strength to resist. His face turned red and his legs kicked randomly in the air. After a moment, he breathed his last and died. Everyone gulped down a mouthful of saliva. A giant spirit realm martial artist was actually killed just like that. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. At this time, Qiushan also came to Nie Tian's side. A trace of shock also appeared on his face. He reckoned that he could also easily kill Ping Shi, but it definitely wouldn't be this easy. When the caravan behind Qiushan saw this scene, They immediately stopped and didn't dare to take half a step forward. After killing Pring Shi, Ding Yifan didn't stop. His cold gaze immediately landed on Lan Yunjiang. Lan Yunjiang felt a chill on his back. He knelt down with a thud and cried bitterly, "Young Master Ding, I am Heaven Luo City's city lord. I am Blue Cloud Emperor's imperial uncle. I beg." Lan Yunjiang was already scared to the point that he couldn't speak coherently. Confused words came out one after another, but he only spoke halfway before he abruptly stopped. Black sand flashed in the air and Lan Yunjiang's head directly fell to the ground. Before he died, his mouth was still open with a face full of fear. Nie Tian curled his lips and glanced at Lan Yunjiang. This old fellow had already left, but he ran back by himself. He was really courting death. Next, Ding Yifan raised his palm and countless clumps of black sand appeared in the air. They condensed into black blades and suddenly attacked the black-clothed men. In just a blink of an eye, all the black-clothed men's heads fell to the ground. All of them died tragically. Gao Han gulped down a mouthful of saliva. He rejoiced in his heart that he didn't stand on Lan Yunjiang's side. Otherwise, he would have become a headless corpse like these people. Ding Yifan killed everyone in the blink of an eye. From start to finish, there wasn't the slightest change in his expression. It seemed like this super genius not only had terrifying talent, his ruthlessness was even more terrifying. Chapter 198. Who are you people? Ding Yifan stared at Nie Tian. His eyes were still cold as he opened his mouth. Without waiting for Nie Tian to speak, Ding Xiaofeng limped forward and said, "Young master, this young master just saved us. He's not an enemy." Nie Tian just smiled faintly and said, "I'm Nie Tian, the new city lord of Heaven Luo City." Ding Yifan glanced at Nie Tian and turned to Ding Xiaofeng as if he didn't hear what he said. "Let's go." Nie Tian frowned slightly and his face darkened. He didn't expect that he was actually ignored. Looking at Ding Yifan's expression, this super genius obviously didn't think much of Nie Tian. "City Lord Nie, thank you for the matter just now. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid none of my brothers and I would be alive." Ding Xiaofeng was very flexible. Seeing Nie Tian's unhappy expression, he quickly smiled apologetically. Moreover, Ding Xiaofeng also admired Nie Tian's strength very much. He was only at the first level of Wanxiang but could fight with a first level of the giant spirit realm martial artist. It was really not simple. Nie Tian nodded slightly. Then, he jerked around to look at the horse-drawn carriage beside Ding Xiaofeng and said, "Young Lord Ding, I'd like to know what's in your carriage that you have to seal it with a third-grade restrictive spell formation." The carriage Nie Tian mentioned was naturally the carriage that Ding Xiaofeng desperately protected. On that carriage, Nie Tian noticed a box that was actually sealed with a third-level restrictive spirit array. Moreover, there was a faint breath of life coming from it, as if it was a living creature. Ding Yifan's expression finally changed a little. He turned around cold and a hint of killing intent shot out from his eyes. He said, "Do I have to tell you if you want to know?" Ding Yifan clearly didn't expect that Nie Tian could actually see the existence of a third-level restrictive spirit array outside the box. This kind of restrictive spirit array was very hidden. Ordinary people couldn't see it at all unless Nie Tian was an alchemist or blacksmith with amazing mental strength. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "That's not it. I'm just curious." "Curious?" Ding Yifan smiled coldly and said in a cold voice, "City Lord Nie, let me give you a piece of advice. Put away your curiosity because curiosity will kill you. Let's go." With that, Ding Yifan didn't waste any more words. With a cold shout, he turned around and left. Ding Xiaofeng hurriedly cupped his hands towards Nie Tian and said apologetically, "City Lord Nie, I am Ding Xiaofeng of the Duan Chamber of Commerce. I will definitely pay you a visit to express my gratitude for today's grace. Farewell." Yes. Ding Yifan was arrogant, but Ding Xiaofeng was very friendly. Nie Tian did not want to reject the other party's face, so he nodded and smiled. The people of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce quickly left, leaving behind a ground littered with corpses. Nie Tian looked at Ding Yifan and the others and murmured, "What's in that box?" "Bo boss." At this moment, Jean de Bao suddenly walked over. His face was deathly pale, as though he had received a huge shock. "Are you okay?" Nie Tian looked at Jean de Bao and said with a smile, "Ding Yifan's strength is a little terrifying, but you don't have to be so scared." Jean de Bao's expression did not ease up. He suddenly whispered into Nie Tian's ear, "Boss, I know what's in that box?" Nie Tian's pupils constricted slightly. He suddenly remembered that Jean de Bao had the Fiend God blood scripture in his body. A Tier 3 restriction spirit array could block other people's perception, but it could not block Jean de Bao's Fiend God blood scripture. Jean de Bao's expression was nervous as he whispered, "Boss, there's a person inside. Moreover, it's a little girl." "Little girl?" Nie Tian's face sank as he thought in his heart, could it be that this Ding Yifan is the same as Qin Yulong? He has a special hobby and specially gets little girls to play with? But this also didn't make sense. Because with Ding Yifan's status, what kind of girl couldn't he get? There was no need to go through so much trouble to transport a girl over, and there was no need to seal her with a Tier 3 restriction spirit array. "What kind of girl is it?" Nie Tian asked. Jean de Bao thought for a moment and said, "She looks no different from an ordinary girl, but her ears are a little long and pointed. Her eyes are gray, her hands are very long, her palms are very big, and the soles of her feet are also very big. The strangest thing is that she seemed to know that I saw her, and even asked me to save her." As Jean de Bao spoke, his forehead began to sweat. As Nie Tian listened to Jean de Bao's description, his expression slowly changed. He had already guessed what was inside the box. A crypt elf? That's right. Nie Tian was almost certain that the person inside the box was not a human, but a crypt elf. In this world, other than humans, there were also dwarves, elves, beastmen, and devilmen. It was just that these races were defeated by humans in the Great War of the ancient times, so they declined. Dwarves, elves, beastmen, devilmen, etc. Generally, they could only be seen occasionally in first-rate empires. They had basically been reduced to slaves of humans. In the society ruled by humans, their status was very low. Among the elves, crypt elves were of very special existence. They did not have extremely long lifespans, and their bodies were not as nimble as other elves. They were much smaller than other elves, and their appearance was far less exquisite. Even an adult crypt elf was only as tall as a 12 or 13-year-old child, only slightly larger than a dwarf. Crypt elves lived underground all year round. They did not like sunlight, and did not like to come into contact with other races. They lived like a hidden family. In ancient times, there were scholars who studied elves who claimed that crypt elves were a hybrid between night elves and goblins, but this theory had never been proven. The greatest ability of crypt elves was their ability to sense ores. They could sense ores buried thousands of meters underground, and they had a unique way of refining. It was rumored that every crypt elf was a master refiner. The crypt elf that Jean de Bao saw might not be a child, but an adult crypt elf. However, Jean de Bao had never seen a crypt elf before, so he mistook it for a child. Nie Tian was very puzzled. Where did the people of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce get a crypt elf? Compared to other races, crypt elves were even rarer. Even in the heaven realm, they were rarely seen. Nie Tian even suspected that Ding Yifan did not know what he had caught. However, from the protection that the Yuan Chamber of Commerce gave to the crypt elves, it was obvious that they valued them very much. It seemed like he had to pay a visit to the Yuan Chamber of Commerce in the future if he had the chance. De Bao, don't tell anyone about this. It's enough that you and I know. Nie Tian reminded Jean de Bao that not many people knew about crypt elves, so it was better not to reveal it for the time being. Next, Nie Tian got the guards to dispose of the corpses on the spot. After all, Heaven Luo Mountain was under the jurisdiction of Heaven Luo City. It was better not to let others see these corpses. Nye Tian's main purpose in coming to Heaven Luo City was the Doomsday Flame, so he did not care much about the crypt elves. After disposing of the corpses, the convoy began to move again. About half an hour later, the convoy finally walked out of Heaven Luo Mountain. Heaven Luo City was already in sight. We're finally here. Nye Tian looked at Heaven Luo City in front of him, and let out a long sigh. Chapter 199. Late at night, Nye Tian led the convoy into the city quietly. Under Gao Han's lead, the convoy quickly arrived at the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion was empty. Lan Yunjiang moved everything clean and did not leave anything for Nye Tian. Even the servants in the mansion were almost all gone, leaving only a few old servants. Lan Yunjiang is quite ruthless, really planning to leave me an empty city. Nye Tian laughed bitterly, but this was also good. Anyway, he had dozens of carriages of valuables in his hands. In less than a day, he could make the city lord's mansion noisy. Nye Tian casually opened a carriage of valuables. The box was full of essence crystals, and looking at the color, they were all mid-grade essence crystals. Middle-grade essence crystals were worth a fortune. Middle-grade essence crystals were equivalent to 100,000 gold coins. Nye Tian pointed at this box of essence crystals and said, "Gao Han, take these essence crystals and distribute them to the guards. In the future, you guys are still Heaven Luo City's guards. Whatever you did before, it's still the same now." Gao Han was stunned and could not react for a long time. He did not expect that Nye Tian was actually so generous. So many essence crystals, there were no less than a few hundred pieces. It was almost worth hundreds of millions of gold coins. Gao Han had been a guard under Lan Yunjiang for so many years and had never received such a big reward before. The other guards also stared blankly, swallowing their saliva frantically. "What are you still standing there for? Carry this box of essence crystals away." Nye Tian looked at these people's expressions and could not help but smile. These guards were really pitiful. They indirectly helped Lan Yunjiang collect so much money, but did not get a single share. Looking at their reactions, it seemed like they had never seen so much money in their lives. In fact, Nye Tian did not care about these valuables at all. If not for him needing some money right now, he did not mind giving away all the valuables. "Hey! Thank you, City Lord." Gao Han finally reacted and could not stop smiling. He hurriedly let a few guards carry the essence crystals away. "City Lord is really good to us. He just came and gave us so many rewards. In the future, I will follow City Lord." "Ha, that's right. City Lord is really generous. In the future, I decided that if City Lord tells me to go east, I will never go west. We will only follow the City Lord's lead. The new City Lord is much better than that old bastard Lan Yunjiang. I really don't know where that bastard Lan Yunjiang got so much money." The group of guards discussed in low voices and happily went to divide the crystals. "Boss, we've struck it rich this time." Jean de Bao walked over with a smile after the guards had all left. Even with Jean de Bao's status, he had never seen so many treasures. Nyeyuro and the others also came down from the carriage. When they saw so much money, they were shocked. "Big brother Nye Tian, we have so much money, when will we ever be able to spend it all?" Nyeyuro's eyes suddenly flashed as she earnestly asked. "It won't take long." Nye Tian smiled faintly. "Ah." Nyeyuro's small mouth formed an O shape, looking extremely shocked and adorable. Nye Tian didn't say too much and said to Zhang Yifeng, "Take them to their respective rooms to rest. Everyone is tired these few days, so let's have a good rest tonight. We'll talk about the rest tomorrow." "Yes." Zhang Yifeng agreed and left with Nyeyuro, Tang Yuyu and Qiu Ling. Nyeyuro was a little reluctant, but she knew that Nye Tian had things to do, so she obediently left with Zhang Yifeng. Nye Tian said to Jean de Bao, "De Bao, take some people and deposit all this money into the bank tomorrow." "All right." Jean de Bao agreed and chuckled. Then, Nye Tian said to Qiu Shan, "Hire a few more servants tomorrow, but not too many." "Yes." Qiu Shan replied respectfully. After doing all this, Nye Tian was also a little tired, so he found a courtyard and entered a room to rest. After a few days of rushing, Nye Tian and the others finally arrived at Tianluo City. Up until now, everything was going smoothly, but no one knew what would happen next. Damn it! The people from the Blue Cloud Empire are simply courting death. In a hidden place in Tianluo City, a middle-aged man's face was gloomy. He slammed his palm down, and the stone table in front of him instantly shattered into pieces. Next to the middle-aged man was a young man with 4 arms with a sinister face. If Nye Tian was here, he would immediately recognize that this person was the 3rd prince of the Wen Qin Empire, Feng Wuk. Unexpectedly, after Feng Wuk escaped from Blue Cloud City, he didn't return to the Wen Qin Empire, but came to Tianluo City. "Uncle, I also didn't expect that the Blue Cloud Emperor would reject our Wen Qin Empire's offer of 12 cities in exchange for Tianluo City. Also, that kid surnamed Nye even ordered people to kill Ho Jian and the others. He is simply too arrogant. He doesn't put the Wen Qin Empire in his eyes at all." Feng Wuk's chin trembled, and his face was sinister. The middle-aged man in front of Feng Wuk was his uncle, Feng Lianqing. Blue Cloud Empire. Do they really think that the Wen Qin Empire is a vegetarian? If they infuriate me, I'll directly send troops to annihilate them. Feng Lianqing clenched his fists, and the anger on his face couldn't be restrained. The Wen Qin Empire was a second-rate empire, and it was an upper-tier empire of the Blue Cloud Empire. Who would have thought that under such circumstances, exchanging 12 cities for 1 city would actually fail? Moreover, even the emissary was killed. The more Feng Lianqing thought about it, the angrier he got, and he stood up and said furiously, "Wuk, return to the Wen Qin Empire right now and ask Imperial Brother to directly annihilate the Blue Cloud Empire." "Alright." Feng Wuk had been waiting for Feng Lianqing to speak, and he immediately agreed. "Wait." Right at this moment, a calm voice sounded out from the side and it said, "Your Highness, this matter is slightly strange, and it's not advisable to make a big fuss. If other powers are alarmed, then it'll be troublesome." The person who spoke was a woman who looked to be around 25 or 26 years old, and she wore a purple dress that seemed to have fused with her. Not only did she have a charming appearance, her figure was curvaceous, and her almost perfect curves caused one to be unable to move their eyes away from her. But the strange thing was that this woman seemed to have a demonic energy, and the air around her actually appeared to be dense, as if it was being roasted by high temperature. And beside this woman was a child who looked to be around 8 or 9 years old, and he hadn't spoken all along. He was extremely quiet, and he had a maturity that didn't match his age. The woman's words were extremely effective on Feng Lianqing, and the latter waved his hand to indicate for Feng Wuk to return, and then he frowned and said, "Mr. Z, could it be that the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone in Heaven Luo Mountain has been leaked?" Dragon Bloodstone! This was the reason why the Wen Qin Empire was willing to exchange 12 cities for Heaven Luo City. The Dragon Bloodstone was a miraculous crystal, and not only could it be used to forge high-grade spirit weapons, it also contained a miraculous substance called Dragon Blood. Chapter 200. Dragon Bloodstone had miraculous effect. At the same time, it was extremely rare and priceless. In large-scale auctions, a palm-sized Dragon Bloodstone was once sold for a sky-high price of 1 billion gold coins, and a drop of dragon blood was even more priceless. It was a treasure that money couldn't measure. The existence of Dragon Bloodstone in Heaven Luo Mountain was a huge secret. The reason why the people of Feng Qin Empire knew of this secret was precisely because this woman called Mr. Z revealed it. Although Feng Lianqing had yet to see the Dragon Bloodstone, he firmly believed in Mr. Z's words. Because this Mr. Z in front of him was a 6th-tier alchemy master. A sixth-tier alchemy master was already a pinnacle existence in the 3,000 small world. It was said that even the president of the 3,000 small worlds alchemist guild was only a sixth-tier alchemy master. With Mr. Z's strength, if he entered the alchemist guild, he could easily obtain a red-robed elder position. But Feng Lianqing knew that this Mr. Z in front of him was like a mystery. He directly appeared out of thin air in Feng Qin Empire. And that child beside her, he was still an infant 10 over days ago. Now, he actually already looked like 8 or 9 years old. Feng Lianqing deduced that Mr. Z must have used some secret technique to let a baby grow so quickly. And what was even stranger was that Mr. Z was very respectful towards this child, calling him master every time he opened his mouth, completely like a servant. The secret of the dragon bloodstone is only known by me and master. It's impossible for others to know. Mr. Z muttered to herself. Immediately, her beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at Feng Wuke. Her expression turned slightly cold as she said, "Unless someone leaked the secret." Feng Wuke was stared at by Mr. Z. His small face turned pale and he immediately explained, "Mr. Z, I really didn't say anything. I didn't tell anyone about the secret of the dragon bloodstone." Feng Lianqing also said, "Mr. Z, although Wuke is a little rash, the matter of the dragon bloodstone is too big. He definitely wouldn't dare to leak it to outsiders. It's best that he didn't tell anyone." Mr. Z's eyes flashed cold as she said coldly. The dragon bloodstone was a rare treasure, and Heaven Luo City was located at the border of 3 empires. If this news leaked out, it would definitely set off a bloodbath in Heaven Luo City. Furthermore, there was a Danwu City beside Heaven Luo City. That was the private city of the Alchemist Guild, and there was a red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Guild overseeing it. If the news of the Dragon Bloodstone was to be known by the Alchemist Guild, then this show would be too good to watch. Compared to ordinary martial artists, alchemists were more aware of the value of the Dragon Bloodstone. A type of crystal that could directly enhance a martial artist's martial physique was truly a favorite of alchemists. Violet. At this moment, the child beside Mr. Z, who had not spoken all this while, suddenly spoke. His voice was very gloomy, completely unlike that of a child. His face flashed with a gloominess that did not match his age. There seemed to be a terrifying aura hidden in his body that could explode at any time. "Master." Mr. Purple was very respectful. He did not even dare to raise his head to look at the child. The child's eyes suddenly flashed with a strange look, and he said, "I feel that the Master of White Flame has come to Tianluo City. Even if the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone is not leaked now, it will be known to the world soon. Looks like we have to get ready. White Flame is here." Mr. Z's face was filled with astonishment. Feng Lianqing listened to the conversation between the master and servant and was completely confused. He could not help but ask with a face full of doubt, "Little mister, may I know how to address you?" This was the first time that Mr. Z's master spoke. Feng Lianqing still did not know how to address this child. The child glanced at Feng Lianqing, causing Feng Lianqing to break out in cold sweat. He hurriedly lowered his head. "Call me Emosher," the child said coldly. "Yes, Lord Emosher." Feng Lianqing wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and lowered his head. He could not imagine that he, a dignified level 5 giant spirit martial artist, would feel as though his soul was penetrated by a single glance from this child. "Master, what do we do next?" Mr. Z bowed and asked. Emosher's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened. Instead of answering Mr. Z's question, he said, "White Flame's master is in Danwu City. It's time for us to make a trip there." In the room, Nie Tian sat cross-legged. His forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and his expression was also very focused. In his soul space, he was inscribing an astral soul. On top of the primal chaos original coffin, a vivid and lifelike fire dragon slowly appeared. Every part of the fire dragon was very lifelike. The dragon head, the dragon body, the dragon claws, the dragon whiskers, and even every dragon scale were exquisite to the extreme. If one were to sense it carefully, they would discover that the entire body of the fire dragon was emitting a scorching aura, as though it was a burning flame. This is the first second-rank astral soul I have inscribed. I'm only missing an eye. Nye Tian was very excited, unable to conceal the agitation on his face. A second-rank astral soul appeared on the 4th page of the Astral Soul Origin Codex. After Nye Tian's strength reached the manifestation realm, he could open the 4th page of the Astral Soul. The 4th page of the Astral Soul was no longer a first-rank astral soul, but a second-rank astral soul. Compared to a first-rank astral soul, a second-rank astral soul was more complicated, and the picture was more exquisite. Nye Tian could even feel that the second-rank astral soul seemed to contain some kind of subtle spiritual aura. The astral soul that Nye Tian was currently inscribing was called the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon. In order to inscribe the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon, Nye Tian had spent a lot of time. He had started inscribing when he was still in Blue Cloud City, and he did not stop on the way to Heaven Luo City. From start to finish, Nye Tian had spent less than 10 days, and he was finally about to finish inscribing the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon. The Soul of the Scarlet Dragon is finally done. After a while, Nye Tian let out a long sigh, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. This was the first second-rank astral soul he had inscribed, and the amount of mental energy and star energy it consumed was far greater than the previous astral souls. Right now, Nye Tian could not estimate the power of the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon, but the instantaneous burst of power should be enough to kill a first-rank giant spirit realm warrior. However, to kill an extraordinary first-rank giant spirit realm warrior like Ding Yifan would probably be a little difficult. After inscribing the astral soul, Nye Tian rested for a while to recover his mental energy, and then he walked out of the room. Gazing at the fiery red morning glow in the east, Nye Tian felt a little worried in his heart. The main body of the Doomsday Flame and its strongest clone came to Heaven Luo City, and then the people of the Wen Qin Empire wanted to exchange 12 cities for Heaven Luo City, and then the Deyuan Trade Association secretly sent over a crypt spirit. These 3 matters did not seem to have any connection, but if one thought about it carefully, one would realize that the final intersection point was in one place, Heaven Luo City. Why did the Doomsday Flame come to Heaven Luo City? Why did the people of the Wen Qin Empire want to obtain Heaven Luo City so urgently? The doubts in Nye Tian's heart grew stronger and stronger, but he could not think of a reason at this moment, so he could only give up for now. Let me take a look again, Doomsday Flame, where are you now? Nye Tian faintly smiled, and took out the Devil Fire diagram, but in the next moment, his expression changed. The Devil Fire diagram has lost its effect. Nye Tian stared at the Devil Fire diagram for a long time, but there was no reaction at all. Chapter 201. After staring at the Demon Fire diagram for a while, Nye Tian gradually calmed down. The Devil Fire diagram was created by an ancient god realm alchemist and had existed for tens of thousands of years. It was impossible for it to suddenly fail, so the most likely reason was that there was a problem with the Doomsday Flame. Could it be that the Doomsday Flame has condensed a physical body, and the demonic fire aura on its body has completely disappeared? Nye Tian frowned as he thought about it, but the next moment, he overturned this guess. According to his previous estimations, even if the Doomsday Flame used the magic flower Blood Lotus to form a physical body, it would at least need to raise its strength to the giant spirit realm in order to completely rid itself of the demonic fire's aura. After the Doomsday Flame condensed his fleshly body, he would have to start cultivating from the first level of the origin meridian. Even if he had a heaven-defying physique, he would still need at least 3 months to advance from the first level of the origin meridian to the first level of the giant spirit. Less than a month had passed, and the Doomsday Flame's strength should be around the origin spirit realm. At most, he had just reached the manifestation realm. There was no way he was in the giant spirit realm. Then, there was only one reason left to explain the demon fire diagram's sudden failure, and that was that the Doomsday Flame had used some special substance to suppress the demonic fire aura in his body, preventing Nye Tian from finding him. Doomsday Flame, you really are ruthless. Forcefully suppressing the demonic fire's aura is equivalent to suppressing the speed at which your strength increases. It seems that you are hiding from me. Nye Tian faintly smiled, but soon became doubtful again. He muttered, Doomsday Flame, if you really want to hide from me, you can run far away. Anyway, your safety is guaranteed with the blazing purple flame. But why did you choose to appear in Tianluo City? Is there really something in Tianluo City that you're interested in? Thinking of this, Nye Tian vaguely guessed that Heaven Luo City might have some unexpected surprises waiting for him. No matter how one looked at it, the abnormal behavior of the Doomsday Flame and the Wind Qin Empire could not be a coincidence. This undoubtedly meant that perhaps the Doomsday Flame was leading the change of cities in the Feng Qin Empire. However, due to a freak combination of factors, the meticulously planned change of city was destroyed by Nye Tian. Also, Nye Tian had a feeling that the Great Yuan Chamber of Commerce was secretly transporting the crypt spirit. He had a feeling that these matters were inextricably linked. At this time, Nye Tian took out a dark steel token. It was the token that Gu Yi had given him before. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he muttered, Perhaps old man Gu knows what's going on. Since I've come to Heaven Luo City, I might as well pay him a visit. Unable to figure out what was going on, Nye Tian thought of Gu Yi. Gu Yi once said that he was at Dan Wu City's Alchemist Guild, and Nye Tian could look for him anytime. Dan Wu City was located in Heaven Luo City, and the two cities were only separated by two city gates. Nye Tian looked at the mystical iron token in his hand and his gaze involuntarily landed on the back of the token, Red Robe, as he muttered, Gu Yi, could you be the Red Robe Elder of the Alchemist Association? The Red Robe Elder of the Alchemist Association was an existence that was only inferior to the President of the Alchemist Association. If Gu Yi was really the Red Robe Elder of the Alchemist Association, Nye Tian might be able to make use of his identity to do something. Thinking of this, Nye Tian couldn't help but reveal a smile, as he firmed up the idea of paying a visit to Gu Yi. Boss. Just as Nye Tian was preparing to go out, Jean de Bao ran over excitedly. Is there anything good? Nye Tian asked with a smile when he saw Jean de Bao's excited look. Haha, very good. Jean de Bao smiled mysteriously, then took out a dark gold card and said, Boss, I've converted all the valuables in those carts into crystals and deposited them into the Diyuan Bank. Guess how many crystals are there in total? Nye Tian shook his head slightly, indicating that he couldn't guess. So many carts of valuables, it was really hard for Nye Tian to guess so suddenly. But seeing how excited Jean de Bao was, it must be a huge sum of money. This number. Jean de Bao was in a fat pig's hand, his 5 fingers spreading open with all his might. 50,000 middle-grade crystals? Nye Tian guessed blindly. Low-grade crystals were equivalent to 10,000 gold coins, middle-grade crystals were equivalent to 10 low-grade crystals. 50,000 middle-grade crystals, that was already 5 billion gold coins. 5 billion gold coins, that was probably a small mountain of gold coins. Boss. Jean de Bao shook his head slightly, his large mouth almost unable to close as he said with a chuckle, 50,000 is 50,000, but it's 50,000 high-grade crystals. 50,000 high-grade crystals, that was 500,000 middle-grade crystals, a whole 10 times higher than Nye Tian's guess. Simply ridiculous. This Lan Yunjiang was indeed a little too much. Probably when he was the city lord, the citizens of Heaven Luo City all tightened their belts to live. That's 500,000 middle-grade crystals, that's not a small amount. Nye Tian had a calm expression, only smiling slightly. Boss, what kind of reaction is that? Jean de Bao was clearly very dissatisfied with Nie Tian's reaction, and said angrily, What do you mean not a small amount? 500,000 middle-grade crystals. Even my father might not be able to take it out. A mere city lord of Blue Cloud River District actually has such a huge sum, simply too shady. But Nie Tian said, after all, he also accumulated for several decades, it's not easy. Jean de Bao had a speechless look, that expression seemed to be saying, really not easy enough, and it was snatched away by you. Boss, the Diyuan Bank is a bank opened by the Diyuan Merchant Association. It has branches in various cities in the 3,000 small world. As long as you hold this card, you can withdraw money from any bank branch, Jean de Bao said as he handed over the dark gold card in his hand. The Diyuan Merchant Association was indeed worthy of being one of the 7 top merchant associations in the Martial Merchant Association. The banks they opened could be found throughout the entire mini-Sumer world. Jean de Bao deposited all his money in the Diyuan Bank's Heaven Luo City branch. Nie Tian did not take the card but said with a smile, I have no use for money, you take it. Anyway, everything I do in the future will be paid by you. Jean de Bao chuckled, obviously not declining, and said, All right, I'll help boss keep it first. Although 500,000 middle-grade crystals was not a small amount, to Nie Tian, it did not have much attraction. This was a world of experts where martial arts reigned supreme. Some truly precious things simply could not be bought with money. For example, some high-grade spirit pills, high-grade martial arts, and martial technique. Those were all the clan treasures of large clans. No matter how much money, it was impossible to buy them. However, 500,000 essence crystals could buy a lot of things. At least to the current Nie Tian, it would be of great use. Nie Tian and Jean de Bao chatted and laughed as they walked out of the courtyard, arriving at the City Lord Manor's inner hall. In the inner hall, several servants were busy, already preparing a table full of sumptuous dishes. Qiushan recruited 6 servants for the City Lord Manor. They were all ordinary people, and one look and it was obvious that they were very honest people. Big brother Nie Tian, come and eat quickly. Nie Yuro had already sat at the dining table, and when she saw Nie Tian coming over, she shouted happily. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and walked over quickly, saying, Ninth sister, did you secretly eat? Your little belly is round now. Nie Yuro's little face blushed, and she hugged little Guai in her arms, saying, I just ate a little. It's all little Guai's gluttony, I just ate a little. Everyone was amused by Nie Yuro's cute appearance and laughed. Chapter 202. Danwu City was right next to Heaven Luo City, but it was much bigger than Heaven Luo City. The biggest difference between Danwu City and other cities was that it was a private city that belonged to the Alchemist Association. So even if it was at the border of the 3 second-rate empires, Fengqin Empire, Shuiwu Empire and Sun Chu Empire, it could still ignore all the disputes in the outside world, like a lone island in the ocean, maintaining its peace. For hundreds of years, no matter how fierce the disputes between the 3 empires were, the flames of war never dared to burn into Danwu City. Because this city belonged to the Alchemist Association, no one dared to have covetous thoughts. It was precisely because of Danwu City's peace that many large merchant associations and clans would set up branches in the city. Diyuan Association, as one of the 7 top merchant associations in the Martial Gathering Merchant Union, naturally had a branch in Danwu City, and also had a very close cooperative relationship with Danwu City's Alchemist Association. At this moment, in the auction house on the 3rd floor of Diyuan Association, a large-scale auction was being prepared. Inside a luxurious private room in the auction house. Haha, didn't expect that Ding Yifun, this kid, actually really got a crypt sprite. Diyuan Association's strength is indeed not to be underestimated. A goateed old man laughed heartily, appearing very happy. And beside him, a dwarf replied in a low, muffled voice, "Big brother, are crypt sprites really that powerful? To be able to detect mineral deposits buried hundreds of meters underground?" This old man and dwarf were none other than Gu Yi and Tong Fu. Gu Yi was currently wearing a long robe, and the long robe was printed with scarlet flames, rather glaring. Anyone with some knowledge could tell that this long robe was the symbol of an alchemist's identity, the long robe of the Alchemist Association's red-clothed elders. Nie Tian did not guess wrongly. Gu Yi was indeed one of the 7 red-clothed elders of the Alchemist Association. That legendary red-clothed elder who was holding down the fort in Danwu City was Gu Yi. It was just that Gu Yi had left Danwu City for decades. Probably no one knew about it. At this moment, beside Gu Yi, a green-clothed young lady pondered for a moment and said, "Teacher, I've never heard of crypt sprites before. Could Ding Yifan have made a fake crypt sprite to deceive us?" The young lady was 15 or 16 years old, with a very pleasant voice, an exquisite figure and exquisite facial features. Especially when she opened her mouth to speak, she would always raise her forehead, revealing her snow-white neck like a proud swan. She was called Shui Linglong, the little princess of the Water Crow Empire. Gu Yi used to be a member of the Water Crow Empire and was the president of the Water Crow Empire's Alchemist Guild. The current president of the Water Crow Empire's Alchemist Guild was his disciple and had some friendship with the Water Crow Emperor. Emperor Shui Wu sent the little princess over to acknowledge him as her master. Gu Yi saw that the latter's talent was not bad, so he accepted her. Shui Linglong had been by Gu Yi's side for less than a month, but Gu Yi was very satisfied with her. He did not hide anything from her. This young lady was only 15 years old, but her mental strength had already reached a terrifying 29th level, and she had long since become a second-ranked pill master. Gu Yi estimated that it would not take long for Shui Linglong's mental power to reach the 30th rank, then she would be able to become a Tier 3 alchemist. A 15-year-old Tier 3 apothecary, just the thought of it was terrifying. Gu Yi looked at Shui Linglong, tapped the latter's small head and said with a smile, "Linglong girl, you are looking down on your teacher too much. I know that Ding Yifan has some fame among the younger generation of the southern region. I heard that he is a super genius ranked 11th on the Martial Merchant Union's genius list. However, even if he is the number 1 genius on the genius list, he would not dare to make trouble in front of me. If he dares to make fun of me, even his father would not be able to protect him." Ding Yifan was extremely famous among the younger generation of the various countries in the southern region. He was the dream lover of thousands of young girls. Shui Linglong had her first awakening of love, and she also had some admiration for Ding Yifan. Tong Fu muttered on the side, "Big brother, even if little baby Ding really got the crypt spirits, with just a silly spirit, can he really detect the location of the dragon blood stone?" Dwarves had a natural hatred for the elves. Even if Tong Fu had never seen the crypt spirits, just the word elf behind it made him very unhappy. But in his words, he mentioned a name, Dragon Bloodstone. Tong Fu inadvertently mentioned the Dragon Bloodstone, exposing the purpose of Gu Yi wanting the crypt spirits, to detect the location of the Dragon Bloodstone. It turned out that more than half a month ago, when Gu Yi passed by Tian Luo Mountain, the Devil Fire White Flame Lai Xian, who had already fused with his original spirit, sensed the existence of the Dragon Bloodstone in Tian Luo Mountain. This discovery made him extremely excited. The Devil Fire had a keen sense of all kinds of ores. Without the White Flame Lai Xian, Gu Yi would not have been able to find the Dragon Bloodstone. Unfortunately, the White Flame Lai Xian could not determine the exact location of the Dragon Bloodstone. Therefore, Gu Yi thought of the crypt spirits that had a special ability to sense ores. He had only inadvertently mentioned it to Ding Yifan, who knew that the latter really got a crypt spirit. Gu Yi received a notice from Ding Yifan, saying that the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce would hold an auction and the crypt spirits would be publicly auctioned. If Gu Yi was interested, he could come and bid. Therefore, Gu Yi and Tong Fu appeared at the auction house. Ding Yifun's move slightly surprised Gu Yi. He thought that the former would directly give the crypt spirit to him. He did not expect that it would be publicly auctioned. It seems that Ding Yifun is not simple. Could he have sensed something? Gu Yi said in his heart. Other than Tong Fu and Shui Linglong, Gu Yi did not let anyone else know about the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone in Tianluo Mountain. Gu Yi really did not believe that Ding Yifun knew anything. However, there were no airtight walls in the world. Perhaps the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone had really been leaked. Gu Yi had to be prepared for everything. He had the Alchemist Guild behind him. Even if the Dragon Bloodstone really came out, he was not afraid. In the 3,000 miniature worlds, the forces that dared to challenge the Alchemist Guild could be counted on one hand. Gu Yi did not think so much for the time being. Next, he just had to prepare for the auction. He was determined to get the crypt spirit. Very few people knew the value of the crypt spirit. If he was lucky, there might not be a single competitor. At that time, he could just use the price of an ordinary slave to bid for the crypt spirit. At the same time, on the streets of Danwu City, the figures of Nie Tian and the others appeared. Coming to Danwu City, Nie Tian originally planned to visit Gu Yi. However, he accidentally heard that the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce was going to hold an auction. He wanted to watch the excitement and see if there was anything he was interested in. Walking on the streets, the figures of Nie Tian and the others were more eye-catching. Other than Qiushan and Jean Debeo, Nie Yuro and the others followed. When the passers-by saw Nie Tian and the others walking over, they could not help but take a few more glances. Their gazes were always on Tang Yuyu. One had to admit that the current Tang Yuyu was indeed very radiant and beautiful, attracting people's wild and fanciful thoughts. She was very tall, far taller than the average girl, almost the same height as Nie Tian. She wore a pale red long dress. It was not revealing, but it could not hide her big breast. The tight little shirt almost could not restrain those two bountiful lumps, exposing her perfect figure. Nie Tian also did not expect that Tang Yuyu, who had changed into women's clothes, would actually be so beautiful. She was simply a natural stunner. Very soon, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 203. A few well-dressed youths had frivolous looks on their faces as they stared fixedly at the two lumps on Tang Yuyu's chest. Their expressions seemed as if they wanted to pounce on her and take a few hundred bites. Ever since Tang Yuyu appeared, these people's gazes had never left her body. Moreover, they would point at her from time to time and even laugh out loud from time to time, almost drooling. Nie Tian's face darkened when he noticed these people. These shameless fellows. It was one thing for them to be wretched, but they had to show it so obviously. Weren't they looking for a beating? Tang Yuyu naturally noticed that she was being stared at, but she was no longer that cruel and ruthless maiden killer. After losing her memories, her temperament had completely changed. Her way of thinking was even simpler than Nie Yuro's. Therefore, not only did she not get angry, but she even smiled sweetly. In this way, those fellows became even more arrogant. Their faces rippled with wretched smiles as they chuckled mischievously. "Young Master Xing, that chick smiled at you. Don't tell me she's taken a fancy to you? She must be interested in young Master Xing. Our young Master Xing is elegant and suave. He's the best at pleasing this kind of chick. Young Master Xing, this chick looks like a virgin. If we get her, we'll have to fight for 300 rounds." These people spoke one after another. The more they spoke, the more overboard they became. They completely disregarded Nie Tian and the others. That young man called young Master Xing's gaze wandered over Tang Yuyu's body without restraint. If his eyes were a little bigger, his eyeballs would have popped out. A bunch of dogs *t. Jean Debeo couldn't help but curse when he saw how arrogant these people were. Nie Tian nodded slightly. Even if Jean Debeo didn't curse, he would. These people were obviously young masters from rich families. It was fine if they were a little arrogant at home, but they still wanted to act like a young master outside. They were simply courting death. That young man called young Master Xing's strength was not bad. He was already at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. He looked to be about 25 or 26 years old. It was not bad to have such strength. Fatty, who are you talking to? Do you want to die? Young Master Xing did not say anything, but a young man beside him shouted out and said with a hideous smile, "Do you know of our young Master Xing's strength and background? He is definitely not someone you can provoke. If you're smart, then kowtow a few times and scram. Otherwise." However, this person had only spoken halfway when 2 murderous sword qis shot out from the sky. Swoosh! Whoosh! The sword qi flew over and directly cut off that person's ears. My ears! Unable to bear the pain, the man subconsciously covered his ears and suddenly howled miserably. Go on. I also want to know what will happen if we don't kowtow and scram. Nie Tianling smiled coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. He had seen a lot of idiots and arrogant people, but it was rare to see such an idiot who was still so arrogant. Nie Tian really couldn't bear to listen to this person's stupid words, so he couldn't help but make a move. Young Master Xing and the others were stunned and couldn't react for a moment. They didn't expect that Nie Tian would actually dare to make a move so suddenly, and so ruthlessly and mercilessly. Little bastard! How dare you touch my people? Young Master Xing roared angrily, his face revealing a hideous expression. He was like an enraged hedgehog, all the needles on his body standing up. Die! Young Master Xing punched out with all his strength. The mighty fist whistled out and directly attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't dodge and directly stabbed out with his sword. The sword qi was like water, surging out violently. What a fast sword! Young Master Xing only saw the sword light flash before his eyes and couldn't react at all. His expression froze for a moment. Bang! An explosion sounded in the air. Young Master Xing's fist was broken, and he was forced to retreat by the sword light, almost unable to stand. On the other hand, Nie Tian was like an old tree with its roots entrenched, not moving at all. In this kind of close combat, even a giant spirit realm martial artist wouldn't be able to gain any advantage against Nie Tian, let alone a 9th level manifestation realm martial artist. You! Young Master Xing was furious. He didn't expect that he would be repelled by a 1st level manifestation realm martial artist. I was just giving you a warning just now. If you dare to attack again, I'll definitely kill you. Nie Tian said in a deep voice with a gloomy expression. This was Danwu City, after all. Nie Tian didn't want to kill people, but if the other party was really stupid, he didn't mind killing him. Little bastard, you're courting death. Being threatened by a 1st level manifestation realm martial artist, young Master Xing immediately felt greatly humiliated. He shouted angrily, and the origin spirit appeared behind him. It was actually a bristled hedgehog. The bristled hedgehog's bristles stood up, obviously furious to the extreme. Nie Tian shook his head slightly. Since the other party was really courting death, he could only make a move. Stop! Right at this moment, a cloud of black sand attacked from the sky. Nie Tian turned around, raised his hand, and stabbed out with his sword. He was actually forced back several steps by the black sand. This cloud of black sand was very familiar. It was precisely from Ding Yifan. Ding Yifan. Young Master Xing was also very surprised when he saw Ding Yifan arrive. Ding Yifan walked over slowly. He didn't look at young Master Xing. Instead, he came to Nie Tian's side and said in a low voice, "City Lord Nie, this person is Xing from Sun Chu Empire's 7th Imperial Palace. Let's end this matter here." Nie Tian frowned slightly and glanced at Gong Xing, whose eyes were still wide open in anger. No wonder this guy was so arrogant. It turned out that he was a prince of Sun Chu Empire. Sun Chu Empire was the same as Fengqin Empire, both were second-rate empires. Because Danwu City was located at the border of 3 empires, These princes and aristocratic families, young masters liked to visit Danwu City. Nie Tian thought for a moment, smiled and said, I didn't want to make a move. It's just that this fool was sincerely looking for a beating, and I couldn't help it. Stinking brat, say it again. Gong Xing pointed at Nie Tian and gnashed his teeth in hatred, but he didn't dare to make a move again. In front of Ding Yifan, even if he was a prince of Sun Chu Empire, he didn't dare to be impudent. After all, this was the Yuan Chamber of Commerce's territory, and Ding Yifan was a figure on the genius ranking. In the South Mountain region, Ding Yifan's reputation was very great. Especially the younger generation martial artists, almost all knew him or had heard of his name. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, It's the same even if I say it 100 times. It won't change the fact that you're an idiot. Gong Xing's face was gloomy. If Ding Yifan wasn't here, he would even have the thought of pouncing on Nie Tian and tearing him apart. Ding Yifan turned and glanced at Gong Xing. He said, Gong Xing, City Lord Nie is my friend. Let's drop this matter here. Ding Yifan's tone was very cold. It was a completely commanding tone. Fine. Gong Xing said eccentrically, since young Master Ding has spoken, I will give you this face. But you can only protect this person for a while. As long as he walks out of Danwu City, I will definitely kill him. Gong Xing's attitude was very arrogant. He completely didn't know that if it wasn't for Ding Yifan arriving in time just now, he would very likely be a corpse right now. Nie Tian looked at Gong Xing's roguish appearance, and the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Nie Tian didn't like trouble, but he wasn't afraid of trouble either. If someone wanted to become his trouble, that person must be eliminated. Chapter 204. With that, Gong Xing swaggered into the Chamber of Commerce. Nie Tian stared at Gong Xing's back. A murderous look flashed across his eyes. It was rare to see an idiot as arrogant as Gong Xing. He was determined to have Tang Yuyu. He wondered how Tang 13 would react if she heard this. Ding Yifan sensed something and said, Castellan Nie, Gong Xing is arrogant but he has the right to be so. The Rishu Empire is not to be messed with. I suggest you don't kill him. Nie Tian smiled faintly, a hint of determination appearing at the corner of his mouth as he said, What if I have to? Ding Yifan's face stiffened but he didn't say anything. He turned and walked into the Chamber of Commerce. Looking at Ding Yifan's back, Nie Tian thought to himself, What kind of person is this Ding Yifan? Ding Yifan stopped the fight between Nie Tian and Gong Xing. On the surface, it seemed like he was helping Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian had a feeling that things weren't that simple. Boss, the auction is about to start. Let's go in, Jean de Bao reminded Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded and walked into the Chamber of Commerce. Tang Yuyu was confused. He asked Qiu Linger in a low voice, Linger, why did Nie Tian fight with someone just now? Qiu Linger looked at Tang Yuyu speechlessly. She thought to herself, It's because of you. Don't you understand? You can't afford to hurt someone with amnesia. Soon, Nie Tian and the others entered the auction room on the 3rd floor. The auction room was huge. It could accommodate tens of thousands of people. There were many things to be auctioned today, and the entire auction house was packed with people. The crowd was moving and the sky was full of noise. Castellan Nie. As soon as they entered the auction room, a familiar face walked over. It was Ding Xiaofeng. Nie Tian saw Ding Xiaofeng and nodded with a smile. Castellan Nie. Ding Xiaofeng was very polite. He walked over quickly and said, There are many people here. Our young master has prepared a VIP room for you. Please follow me. Nie Tian smiled playfully and said, Your young master really cares about me. First, he didn't let me offend the prince of the Rishu Empire, and now he's arranged a VIP room for me. Isn't he being a little too enthusiastic? Not at all. Ding Xiaofeng smiled awkwardly and said, City Lord Nie is an esteemed guest of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce. Didn't you deposit 500,000 mid-grade origin crystals with the Yuan Bank today? Nie Tian smiled faintly. He had actually forgotten about this matter. At the end of the day, Ding Yifan was still a businessman, so he was more sensitive to money. Jean de Bao deposited 500,000 mid-grade essence crystals in one go. It was not strange for Ding Yifan to know of such a large sum very quickly. Nie Tian no longer declined and followed Ding Xiaofeng to a luxurious VIP lounge. Once he entered the VIP lounge, he could no longer hear any of the surrounding noises. This VIP lounge was obviously equipped with a soundproof spiritual array. Setting up a spirit array for just one VIP lounge was enough to show how wealthy the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce was. Moreover, this soundproof spiritual array had a switch. Once the auction started, the spiritual array would automatically turn off. Big brother Nie Tian, it's so lively down there. Ro doesn't want to stay here. I want to go out and take a look. Nie Yuro came to the VIP lounge, but she seemed very unhappy and pulled Nie Tian. You guys don't want to stay here either? Nie Tian glanced at Tang Yuyu and Xiao Ling. The two girls clearly didn't want to stay in the dull VIP lounge either. NN. The two girls nodded in unison. Nie Tian was speechless. What kind of fate was this? They felt uncomfortable after entering the VIP lounge. However, the auction house in front of him was indeed very large. There were many strange things on display, which were very attractive to curious little girls. Nie Tian said to Qiu Shan, "Qiu Shan, you go with them. Protect them well. If anyone tries to provoke you, don't hesitate to attack." Tang Yuyu was too coveted after all, so Nie Tian had to warn Qiu Shan. Yes. Qiu Shan bowed and agreed. Qiu Shan left with the three girls, leaving only Nie Tian, Jean de Bao and Zhang Yifeng in the VIP lounge. Zhang Yifeng thought for a moment and said, "Teacher, I feel that Ding Yifan isn't that simple. On the surface, he seems to be trying to rope us in, but there must be a deeper consideration behind the scenes." Jean de Bao didn't wait for Nie Tian to speak and chuckled. "That kid doesn't have so many thoughts. I think he thinks we're rich, so he suddenly saved 500,000 mid-grade origin crystals. He was scared by us." Nie Tian glanced at Jean de Bao and shook his head slightly. Jean de Bao was still too young and couldn't see the essence of the matter. Diyuan Chamber of Commerce was one of the 7 top Chamber of Commerce in the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce. As the young master of Diyuan, why would Ding Yifan care about a mere 500,000 mid-grade origin crystals? Moreover, since Ding Yifan was on the genius ranking, how could he be a person who valued money so much? No matter what his motives are, as long as he doesn't harm us, it's fine. Otherwise, I won't let him off either. Nie Tian smiled faintly, a hint of coldness floating across his face. At the same time, in another VIP lounge of the auction house. "Has Nie Tian entered the VIP lounge?" Ding Yifan asked indifferently, his face not showing much of an expression. "Young Master, City Lord Nie has entered the VIP lounge. According to Young Master's instructions, his VIP lounge is beside Grandmaster Gu Yi." Ding Xiaofeng stood opposite Ding Yifan and bowed, not daring to disobey in the slightest. "Very good." Ding Yifan's handsome face finally revealed a hint of a smile as he said softly, "Grandmaster Gu Yi, Nie Tian City Lord, since you're so interested in the Crypt Sprites, will there be an exciting competition next?" Crypt Sprites, Ding Yifan also said this name. Gu Yi had underestimated Ding Yifan. Since Ding Yifan had found a Crypt Sprite for Gu Yi, how could he not secretly investigate the uses of Crypt Sprites? Knowing that the Crypt Sprites were most proficient in sensing ores, Ding Yifan guessed something fishy from it. He faintly felt that perhaps Gu Yi knew that there were some precious mineral deposits nearby and needed the Crypt Sprites to find out the specific location. As for what these precious mineral deposits were, it was unknown. And the reason why Nie Tian caught Ding Yifan's attention was obviously not because he had saved up 500,000 mid-grade essence crystals, but because of a casual remark that night. Nye had once seen that the crypt sprites were sealed by a Tier 3 restrictive spirit array. It was this point that made him arouse Ding Yifun's interest. The Tier 3 restrictive spirit array that Ding Yifun had set up was arranged by a Tier 4 spiritual array master. Ordinary people would not be able to see through it at all, unless it was a martial artist whose spiritual power had reached Tier 40 and above, or someone who had a special sense towards restrictive spirit arrays. Ding Yifun naturally would not believe that Nye spiritual power would reach Tier 40 and above. The increase of spiritual power was different from martial artists' cultivation, it was a slow accumulation process. Even if one consumed some heaven and earth treasures, it would only slightly increase the speed of spiritual power increase. The most abnormal spiritual power genius that Ding Yifun had ever seen was one of Sumi Ling City's 3 great evildoers, Gu Qiulong. This person was only 20 years old, but his spiritual power had already reached a terrifying Tier 45. He was a genuine Tier 4 alchemist and Tier 4 weapon craftsman. Chapter 205. Ding Yifun guessed that it was definitely impossible for Nye mental strength to reach rank 40 and above, so he must be a martial artist with a special sense for spirit formations. And judging from Nye battle with Peng Shi, this first-level giant spirit martial artist, and his attitude towards the victory of the 7th Emperor's palace that night, this was clearly not an ordinary youth. Since the Blue Cloud Empire's emperor let a teenage youth oversee Heaven Luo City, this place where dragons and snakes mingled, it was enough to show that Nye had a certain level of strength. Ding Yifun even found out what Nye had done in Blue Cloud City during this period of time, which surprised him even more. Hence, he developed a strong interest in Nye. Ding Yifun guessed that there must be a great force behind Nye. It was just that this force had not been revealed yet. Therefore, it was undoubtedly a good idea to use Nye to probe the ancient will. One had to admit that Ding Yifun's mind was sharp and meticulous. Unfortunately, regarding Nye, he guessed completely wrong. Nye did not have any great force behind him, and his mental strength had indeed reached rank 40. The most important thing was that Nye already knew of the existence of the crypt sprites. Crypt sprites, this was also the reason why Nye came to the auction house. He wanted to see if Ding Yifun would take out the crypt sprites to auction. If the crypt sprites were to be auctioned publicly, even if Nye had to spend all his wealth, he must get it. The preciousness of the crypt sprites was not something that ordinary people could understand. Even if he had to throw in all 500,000 middle-grade essence crystals, Nye must get the crypt sprites. It was just that he did not know if Ding Yifun would auction the crypt sprites. Nye and Ding Yifun definitely did not know, the two of them thought of the same thing. Ding Yifun wanted Nye to bid for the crypt sprites, and Nye wanted Ding Yifun to auction the crypt sprites. Both of them were taking what they needed. It was just that this way Gu Yi would probably suffer. After a moment, the noisy auction house suddenly quietened down. On the auction stage, a young woman in her 20s leisurely walked over, twisting her graceful figure. This was a charming and seductive woman wearing a pink dress. Her figure was tall and slender, and her curves were curvaceous. Her chest was full to the point of exploding, and her red lips were scorching hot. She was exceptionally charming. If Emo Rushi and Rui Qianyu were devastatingly beautiful, then this woman in front of him was devastatingly beautiful. Her appearance immediately attracted countless gazes. Many men stared blankly, gulping with all their might. She glanced at the crowded auction house, which was already filled to the brim. She could not help but smile charmingly as she spoke in a seductive voice. Welcome to the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's auction house. I am the auctioneer of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, Aokiki Lily. Aoki Lily said as she scanned the crowd with her enchanting eyes. Her voice wasn't loud, but that crisp and numbing voice seemed to have a magical power that could invade people's eardrums, as if she was speaking right into their ears. As soon as Aoki Lily spoke, the crowd below almost went crazy. F*ck me, she's the chief auctioneer of the Duen Chamber of Commerce, Aoki Lily. She's so beautiful. Is there any justice in this world? They're both women, but why is there such a huge disparity between them? I'm going to divorce my wife when I get back, someone said angrily. Miss Lily's voice is so beautiful. It's so sweet that it makes one's bones melt. Being able to see Miss Lily today, it's worth dying, someone said in a daze. Miss Lily, I really love you. I want to have a bunch of monkeys with you. The most exaggerated thing was that there was actually a public confession. In the VIP room, Jean de Bayo's eyes were also glued to the scene. De Bayo. Nye Tian reminded Jean de Bayo, and the latter only then came to his senses. It had to be said that when Aoki Lily appeared just now, even Nye Tian almost couldn't recover from his daze. However, he quickly came to his senses and confirmed that this Aoki Lily was not simple. Her original spirit seemed to have a magical power that could cause people to hallucinate. If one's willpower or strength was not strong enough, one look from Aoki Lily would probably cause them to fall for her. Nye Tian took another look at Aokiki, who was wearing a long, pink dress, and cursed inwardly, "This woman is a demon." "So she's Aoki Lily," Jean de Bayo said embarrassedly as he calmed down and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Fortunately, Chiu Ling didn't see his embarrassed expression just now. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. "You know this woman?" Nye Tian was slightly stunned. Jean de Bayo said, "Boss, this woman is amazing. She's a great beauty that everyone in the Nanshan region knows about. I've only heard of her before, but today is the first time I've seen her." Nye Tian nodded slightly. Aoki Lily was indeed very beautiful. That was an undeniable fact. "Young Master Jean, I've heard that Aoki Lily is ranked 10th on the Nanshan Region Genius list of the Martial Gathering Merchant Union. Is that true?" Zhang Yifeng had clearly heard of Aoki Lily's name and asked curiously. Nye Tian couldn't help but be surprised. If Aoki Lily was just beautiful, it wouldn't be surprising. But if she was ranked 10th on the genius list, that would be incredible. One should know that even Ding Yifan was only ranked 11th on the genius list. Aoki Lily's ranking was even higher than Ding Yifan's. Could it be that her strength was above Ding Yifan's? This was simply unimaginable. "Ah!" Jean de Bayo let out a weird cry and said, "I almost forgot about that. Not only is Aoki Lily beautiful, but she's also extremely talented. Even Ding Yifan can't compare to her. Not only is she ranked 10th on the genius list of the Nanshan region, but she's also the adopted daughter of the president of the Duen Chamber of Commerce." Nye Tian was stunned again. He smiled and said, "Then, isn't she Ding Yifan's sister?" "Yes." Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "I'm so envious of Ding Yifan. He actually has such a beautiful sister, and they're not related by blood." "That's just," Jean de Bayo suddenly realized something. He chuckled and didn't continue speaking. Nye Tian couldn't help but stare at Aoki Lily for a while longer. He murmured in his heart, "Aoki Lily is indeed quite powerful. I can't even tell your strength. Is there something special about your original spirit?" Aoki Lily was indeed an experienced auctioneer. She didn't care about the reactions of the crowd. She smiled charmingly and said in her charming voice again, "I'd like to thank everyone for taking care of the Duen Chamber of Commerce. It's because of everyone's support that the Duen Chamber of Commerce can prosper." As soon as her voice fell, the crowd cheered and jumped for joy. Then, Aoki Lily waved her hand slightly and the crowd immediately quieted down. She smiled and said, "Next, let's welcome the chief appraiser of the Duen Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Lin Yifang." Lin Yifang. Everyone was shocked when they heard the name. Then, the crowd applauded enthusiastically. Then, an old man with flowing silver hair appeared on the auction stage. Aoki Lily bowed slightly and made way for him. Chapter 206. Lin Yifang, an elder of the Lin family, a family of appraisers? Within the VIP lounge, upon hearing Lin Yifang's name, Jean de Bao immediately frowned and exclaimed in astonishment, "The Deyuan Chamber of Commerce is truly rich and overbearing. They actually managed to invite someone from the Lin family for an auction." "De Bao, is this old man surnamed Lin very powerful?" Nie Tian could not help but ask when he saw the unusual reactions of the people present and Jean de Bao. Jean de Bao explained, "Boss, you don't know. The Lin family is a family of appraisers in the mini Sumeru world. This family is completely different from the others. They do not cultivate martial arts but instead focus on appraisal. It is said that the juniors of the Lin family do not cultivate at all. They have been exposed to all kinds of strange things since they were children. Furthermore, their origin spirits seem to be inherited from their bloodline. They have a keen perception of various martial arts techniques, ores, and medicinal herbs. They are able to appraise the grade of these items and give an accurate price. Therefore, all large auctions will invite people from the Lin family to host the auctions. This is because the price of the treasures appraised by them will always be the fairest. If there is a mistake with the items appraised by the Lin family will compensate 100 times the price. However, the items appraised by the Lin family have never been wrong." "I see." Nie Tian could not help but nod when he heard Jean de Bao's explanation. If a origin spirit was powerful to a certain extent, it could be passed down through the bloodline. Furthermore, each generation would have a different degree of strength. The Lin family actually possessed a bloodline origin spirit that was passed down through the generations. "Who is this Lin Yifang?" Nie Tian asked. Jean de Bao chuckled and said, "Lin Yifang is an inner elder of the Lin family. His attainments are quite profound. It is said that he can identify all the ancestors of an item with just a glance. There are no mistakes." "Impressive." Nie Tian nodded with a smile, feeling slightly amazed in his heart. Zhang Yifeng also knew of the Lin family. He smiled and said, "I heard that the Lin family is known as the fifth great family outside of the four great families of the 3,000 small worlds. To invite this old Mr. Lin Yifang, the Deyuan Association will probably have to spend a lot of money." "The fifth great family?" Nie Tian was stunned again. Jean de Bao chuckled and said, "Hee, it's just a casual remark from a busybody. In the past 100 years, countless families have wanted to become an existence on par with the four great families, but none of them succeeded. The wealth of the four great clans was unimaginable. Compared to them, the Lin family is still a little lacking." Jean de Bao was right. The Lin family was still too weak to become one of the top aristocratic families. At the same time, in a VIP lounge next to Nie Tian. "Holy shit! It's Lin Yifang!" Gu Yi suddenly stood up, spitting out the mouthful of tea that he had just drunk, and looked at Lin Yifang with an exaggerated expression. "Big brother, are you alright?" Tong Fu saw Gu Yi's reaction and frowned. "Is that white-haired old man very powerful? Why can't I see it?" On the side, Shui Linglong also frowned and shook her head. She said, "With the people from the Lin family, Ding Yifan definitely knows the value of the underground cave spirit. This time, it will be a bit difficult for teacher to bid for the underground cave spirit." "That's right." Gu Yi slapped his thigh, his face full of vexation. He had thought of this point, which was why he had such a big reaction. Ding Yifan was really meticulous in doing things. He was actually willing to spend so much capital, even inviting Lin Yifang over. And in another VIP lounge not far from Nie Tian and Gu Yi, a few people had equally shocked expressions. The people from the Lin family have appeared. Could it be that there will be some shocking item appearing in this auction? Feng Lianqing had an astonished expression as he muttered. Mr. Purple and Mo Sure clearly did not know who Lin Yifang was. After Feng Lianqing's explanation, they also knew the latter's identity. Could it be that the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone has really been leaked? Mo Sure frowned. In just a day, his appearance had changed again. He had grown a lot taller and matured a bit. Mr. Purple's purple clothes flowed like flames, and his expression was also not very good. In the auction house. Very quickly, the auction began under Lin Yifang's hosting. The first auction item was a rank 3 spirit weapon, Crimson Flame Spear. It was very domineering and very suitable for martial artists with fire attribute spirit origin. The price that Lin Yifang offered was 3 low-grade origin crystals, which was very standard. I offer 10 low-grade origin crystals. I offer 20 low-grade origin crystals. A bunch of poor people, what are you doing in the auction house? Lady Lily is personally auctioning it. I offer 100 low-grade origin crystals. The voices of bidding rose and fell. Aokiki Lily chuckled and said, "This Mr. offers 250 low-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone who can bid higher than him? This little girl likes tall people." It had to be said that Aokiki Lily was indeed good at stirring up the atmosphere. Every frown and smile of hers, and every movement of hers, would cause the price below to skyrocket. The atmosphere of the auction house, driven by Aokiki Lily, maintained its climax from beginning to end. A middle-aged martial artist with a scar on his face made up his mind and shouted, "Damn it, I'll go all out, I offer 500 low-grade origin crystals." Hearing this voice, everyone looked over in disbelief. 500 low-grade origin crystals. This idiot finally got his wish of getting the rank 3 spirit weapon, Crimson Flame Spear. The funniest thing was that this guy still had a very smug look, as if he had gotten a huge bargain. Inside the VIP lounge, Nie Tian could not help but frown repeatedly. These people were all like lunatics. A mere rank 3 spirit weapon, at most 10 low-grade origin crystals, but in the end it was actually raised to 500 low-grade origin crystals. Truly outrageous. Nie Tian could only sigh speechlessly. Either way, he was not interested in these things. Even if it was 1 low-grade origin crystal, he was also not willing to pay. Buying something that was worth more than its value back, wasn't that an idiot? Following that, several tens of things continued to be auctioned. The price that Lin Yifang offered each time was very fair, but after a few words of provocation from Aokiki Lily, the final transaction price would all exceed the real price by several tens of times. One had to admit that Lin Yifang and Aokiki Lily worked well together. One was in charge of evaluating the price, the other was in charge of raising the price. The division of labor was clear and very reasonable. Yet, Nie Tian was a little tired in the VIP lounge. These things were not what he was interested in, and he unconsciously felt that it was rather boring. But he knew that the highlight of this auction was definitely at the back. The few people in the nearby VIP lounges had not called out a price yet, which meant that they were also waiting. At this time, Lin Yifang's figure appeared on the auction stage once again, and a purple pill cauldron appeared in front of him. Lin Yifang had a good-natured look as he introduced with a smile, "Next is today's auction's 43rd auction item, a rank 5 spirit artifact, Purple Sun Pill Cauldron. Holy sh*t, it's actually a rank 5 spirit artifact. So what if it's rank 5? Too bad it's not a spirit weapon, but a pill cauldron. I'm not an alchemist, nor am I an artificer. What use do I have for it? I'm not an alchemist, but I can buy this pill cauldron and gift it to an alchemist." The moment Lin Yifang's words fell, there was immediately a wave of discussion below. Chapter 207. "Boss, are you alright?" Jean de Bao saw Nie Tian's strange expression and couldn't help but ask. Although he knew that Nie Tian was an alchemist, a mere 5th-tier pill cauldron shouldn't be enough to make Nie Tian lose his composure. Zhang Yifeng also looked at Nie Tian, not knowing why the latter would have such a reaction towards the Purple Sun Pill Cauldron. A 5th-tier pill cauldron was undoubtedly precious and very attractive to alchemists, but with Nie Tian's mental fortitude, even a 7th-tier pill cauldron wouldn't be like this. Intuition told Zhang Yifeng that there was definitely something fishy about this. "Nothing much," Nie Tian reacted, but only smiled faintly and didn't say much. The reason why he was so interested in the purple sun pill cauldron was because this pill cauldron was personally refined by him. Nye Tian still remembered that the purple sun pill cauldron was the first fifth-tier spiritual weapon he refined when he became a fifth-tier alchemist. And he had used the purple sun pill cauldron as his pill refining vessel for many years. So when the purple sun pill cauldron appeared, Nye Tian's expression turned sluggish. He didn't know why the purple sun pill cauldron would appear in the 3,000 small worlds, but seeing the purple sun pill cauldron before his eyes made Nye Tian recall many past events. On the auction stage, Lin Yifang gently stroked the purple sun pill cauldron and smiled faintly. The purple sun pill cauldron is a genuine fifth-tier spiritual weapon, and there are even and clear purple cauldron markings on the inside of the cauldron. This old man concludes that this cauldron was formed after a long period of purple fire burning. Looking at the clear and distinct markings, this pill cauldron must have been used by an alchemist master before. According to this old man's speculation, this alchemist master's alchemy skills are very high, at least a 7th-tier alchemist. 7th-tier alchemist. The moment Lin Yifang said this, there was a burst of exclamations below. A 7th-tier alchemist, this was already an amazing existence. Even in the entire 3,000 small worlds, there wasn't a single 7th-tier alchemist. Nye Tian looked at Lin Yifang and smiled faintly, saying in his heart, "The Lin family's people are indeed worthy of having a primordial spirit bloodline. They indeed live up to their reputation." To be able to guess the user's alchemy attainments just by looking at the cauldron pattern, truly impressive. What Lin Yifang said was very right. When Nye Tian abandoned the violet sun pill cauldron, he was already an 8th-ranked pill master. Moreover, he had indeed used the 51st-ranked netherworld purple flame on the devil fire list. The people of the Lin clan were not simple. Lin Yifang waved her hand, indicating for them to be quiet, and continued, "Our mini-Sumer world doesn't have any 7th-tier alchemists, so this old man guessed that the previous owner of the violet sun pill cauldron was most likely an important person from the world above. However, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that this old man can sense a true intent of alchemy and a true intent of martial arts from the purple yang pill cauldron. It must be left behind by that important figure in the purple yang pill cauldron, waiting for a fated person to obtain it. True meaning of pill Dao. True intent of martial Dao." Lin Yifang's words almost made the people below boil with excitement. It's actually used by a great character from the world above. It's really strange. Something that possesses both the true meaning of alchemy and the true meaning of martial Dao. Oh my God, there really is such a heaven-defying thing. True intent of martial Dao, I really sensed it. This is simply a gift bestowed to me by the heavens. True meaning of alchemy and true meaning of martial Dao. Even if your father has to go bankrupt and pawn off my underwear, I also want to buy the purple yang pill cauldron. Stop bullshitting. This is a pill cauldron. Will those alchemists let it go? Who doesn't know that what alchemists lack the least is money? The people below seethed intensely, and all sorts of bootlicking words came out. In the VIP lounge, Nye Tian's brows also furrowed again and again. He did not think that this Lin Yifang was actually so heaven-defying, to actually sense the true intent of alchemy and martial Dao that he once left on the purple yang pill cauldron. Martial artists cultivated in defiance of the heavenly Dao. When they were powerful to a certain extent, such as reaching the heavenly emperor realm, they could comprehend the true intent of martial Dao, and condense the true intent into a corporeal form, storing it inside the spirit artifact. But Nye Tian was only trying it out at that time. Who knew that he really succeeded? Originally, he thought that no matter how powerful Lin Yifang was, it was impossible to sense the existence of true intent of alchemy and martial Dao. He still underestimated Lin Yifang too much. This time, things were a little troublesome. If Nye Tian wanted to take back the purple yang pill cauldron, he would probably have to pay a heavy price. Teacher, are you interested in the purple yang pill cauldron? Zhang Yifeng could not help asking when he saw Nie Tian shake his head repeatedly. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, I'm preparing to buy the purple yang pill cauldron and give it to you as a gift. Nie Tian wanted to take back the purple yang pill cauldron. Of course, it was not for his own use, but for Zhang Yifeng. Zhang Yifeng was Nie Tian's personal disciple, after all. Leaving the true intent of alchemy and martial Tao within the purple yang pill cauldron to him was also considered keeping the goodies within the family. But from the looks of it, the crowd outside would definitely be frantically fighting over the purple yang pill cauldron. Coupled with the alluring greenwood lily adding fuel to the fire, the purple yang pill cauldron would probably be sold for a sky-high price. When Zhang Yifeng heard that Nie Tian wanted to give the purple yang pill cauldron to him, he was so excited that he nearly cried. He hurriedly said, Thank you, teacher. When he heard Lin Yifeng's introduction of the purple yang pill cauldron, Zhang Yifeng was naturally moved. But since Nie Tian showed great interest, he did not dare to snatch something from his teacher. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said to Jean de Bao, get the purple yang pill cauldron later. No matter how much it costs, regardless of the cost. Alright. Jean de Bao readily agreed. He had the Diyuan Bank's gold card with 500,000 middle-grade essence crystals, so he was already impatient. But Nie Tian knew that it would not be easy to get the purple yang pill cauldron. Since he was interested, the other alchemy masters were naturally interested as well. Lin Yifeng saw that the crowd was boiling over, and her lips curled into a faint smile. She immediately waved her hand to signal for silence and said, Everyone, please calm down. This purple yang pill cauldron is one of the treasures of this auction. An ordinary 5th-grade spirit weapon is priced at 1,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals, but the purple yang pill cauldron is not an ordinary weapon. It also contains the true meaning of alchemy and martial arts. This old man values it at 10,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. After Lin Yifeng finished speaking, she glanced at Greenwood Lily. The latter smiled and said in a charming voice, Lily has already felt everyone's enthusiasm. Now everyone, please start the bidding. Lin Yifeng introduced the purple yang pill cauldron in detail, saving Greenwood Lily a lot of trouble. At this moment, even if she did not say anything, the entire crowd would definitely be boiling over. When Greenwood Lily's voice fell, the entire crowd was dead silent. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, as if they were pondering something. Anyone could see that a storm of bidding was about to come. I bid 10,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. After a short period of dead silence, someone was finally the first to bid. It was a muscular man with a full beard. F***ck your poor ass. You only bid 10,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. Are you looking down on the true meaning of martial arts? I bid 20,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. Before he had finished speaking, a young man in his 20s stood up and shouted loudly. I bid 30,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. Following that, someone bid even higher. Following that, the sounds of bidding rose and fell, and did not stop. Chapter 208. 430,000 low-grade essence crystals. Jean de Bao's forehead was covered in sweat. Although he was mentally prepared, he didn't think that a small cauldron could cause such a frenzy of bidding. Originally, Jean de Bao thought that at most 100,000 low-grade essence crystals would be enough to win it. Mother F***ker, this group of people are all F***king crazy. Is it worth it for a broken cauldron? Jean de Bao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead as he cursed. And that bastard, why did he put a true meaning of alchemy or martial Tao into the cauldron for no reason? Isn't he just looking for trouble? He really has nothing better to do. Nie Tian was speechless. He frowned at Jean de Bao, and could only say in his heart, De Bao, that bastard who has nothing better to do is your boss. Zhang Yifeng also didn't expect this and said, Teacher, forget about the purple sun pill cauldron. Student doesn't want it. If the purple sun pill cauldron was bought for tens of thousands of low-grade essence crystals, it was fine. But if the price was too high, Zhang Yifeng felt embarrassed. No matter, let them bid. The purple sun pill cauldron is a gift from Master. How can I go back on my words? Nie Tian waved his hand and smiled. Nie Tian didn't care about money. What was the use of having more money? It was paper if he couldn't spend it. Anyway, he had 500,000 mid-grade essence crystals, he could play around with it. Zhang Yifeng saw Nie Tian's indifferent face and didn't say anything else, but he was grateful in his heart. In the auction, the bidding went crazy. Aokiki Eureka laughed so hard that she was shaking. Lin Yifeng was also grinning from ear to ear. The more intense the bidding, the happier they were. As the price got higher, the voices of the bidding became fewer and fewer. I bid 601,000 low-grade essence crystals. A youth in fine clothes stood up. It was none other than the seventh prince of the Sun Chu Empire, Gong Sheng. But his expression didn't look too good. This price was probably the limit of what he could afford. His Highness Gong Sheng of the Sun Chu Empire has bid 601,000 low-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone who has bid higher than him? Aoki Eureka smiled brightly at Gong Sheng, her sweet voice resounding in everyone's ears. 600,000 low-grade yuan spirit. This price was already too high. It was far beyond what most of the people present could afford. Even if some people were willing to sell their entire fortune for underwear, the underwear wouldn't be worth much. At the crucial moment, it was still the royal family that had the foundation and was willing to pay the price. The whole place was silent. No one dared to bid again. Even if the alchemy masters were rich, there was still a limit to how much they could afford. 600,000 low-grade essence spirits had already exceeded their limit. Debao. In the VIP room, Nie Tian signaled to Jean Debao. It was time for them to bid. Cough cough. Jean Debao coughed twice, walked out of the VIP lounge, and shouted, I bid 601 low-grade origin crystals. 01 yuan. As soon as Jean Debao said this, everyone's gazes turned to him. They all had strange expressions on their faces. Jean Debao roused himself and said, What? Isn't it allowed? Aoki Lily was slightly taken aback. When she saw Jean Debao coming out of the VIP lounge, she immediately smiled charmingly and said, Oh, of course. This young master bid 601 low-grade essence crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? In the VIP lounge, Nie Tian also broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't think that Jean Debao would actually add a low-grade origin crystal. It was really hard for him to shout out. To think that Jean Debao was the son of the richest man in the Blue Cloud Empire. Gong Sheng looked at Jean Debao and obviously recognized him. He was instantly stunned and looked at the latter suspiciously. To think that he, a dignified Sun Empire's prince, couldn't even get a VIP lounge, but Jean Debao and the others were actually in the VIP lounge. There was really no justice in this world. At this time, Gong Sheng couldn't help but guess the real relationship between Nie Tian and Ding Yifan. However, Gong Sheng didn't want to give up on the purple sun pill cauldron. He immediately shouted, I bid 602 low-grade origin crystals. As soon as he said this, the scene instantly vomited blood. Jean Debao and Gong Sheng added one low-grade origin crystal at a time. Wasn't this a joke? Jean Debao chuckled, and was just about to bid again when a young lady walked out from the box next door. That young lady walked out and glared at Jean Debao fiercely. She put on a very disdainful face and then said proudly, This princess bids 700,000 low-grade origin crystals. When the people below saw the young lady's face clearly, they started discussing. Wow! It's the Water Crow Empire's Princess Shui Linglong. I heard that Princess Shui Linglong is a Tier 2 alchemist. She's only 14 years old this year, but her mental strength is freakish. I reckon that she bought this purple sun pill cauldron for herself. The Water Crow Empire is rich. Her Highness the little princess casually added close to 100,000 low-grade origin crystals. Much better than these two fellows who bid one piece at a time. The little princess is a real man. This young lady who looked down on Jean de Bayeux was precisely Gu Yi's little disciple, Shui Linglong. Hearing the discussions below, Shui Linglong smiled proudly. She snorted provocatively at Jean de Bayeux and immediately walked into the box. Teacher, is the purple sun pill cauldron really worth 700,000 low-grade origin crystals? If I buy it back and it's not worth it, Father Emperor will scold me again. Shui Linglong called out the price confidently. However, when she returned to the box, she was a bit worried about Gu Yi. She pouted her small mouth and said worriedly. Gu Yi laughed mischievously and said, "Little girl, you still don't believe in your teacher's words? If your father dares to scold you, your teacher will scold him for you. Teacher will keep to his words." Shui Linglong smiled proudly. She wasn't worried at all. And outside, Jean de Bayeux and Gong Sheng were both startled. They didn't expect that a little girl would suddenly appear out of nowhere, and furthermore, she was so ferocious. Aoki Lily, however, was very happy. She smiled brilliantly and said loudly, "Princess Shui Linglong bids 700,000 low-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid?" Sigh. Gong Sheng let out a long sigh, then sat down and directly gave up. Jean de Bayeux turned his head around and took a look at Nie Tian. Nie Tian was currently whispering into Zhang Yifeng's ear. Zhang Yifeng walked out of the VIP room and shouted, "I bid 100,000 mid-grade origin crystals." Jean de Bayeux looked at Zhang Yifeng speechlessly, as if he didn't know Zhang Yifeng at all. Zhang Yifeng pointed at Nie Tian, indicating that it was teacher who told me to bid. Nie Tian smiled faintly towards Jean de Bayeux, looking like he didn't care at all. "Boss, you are really a prodigal." Jean de Bayeux's chubby face puffed up as he said in his heart. Jean de Bayeux suddenly recalled that when Nie Yuro asked Nie Tian how long it would take for him to finish spending so much money, Nie Tian said that it would be very soon. Seems like Nie Tian wasn't joking at all. According to this way of spending, not only would it be very soon, it would be very soon. Suddenly hearing the bid of 100,000 mid-grade origin crystals, everyone went into a daze. Everyone looked at Zhang Yifeng blankly. If not for the latter's serious expression, they would have thought that he was a madman who ran out from a mental hospital. 100,000 mid-grade origin crystals. That was 1 million low-grade origin crystals. That was exactly 1 million low-grade origin crystals. Directly increasing the bid by 300,000 low-grade origin crystals. Is he so rich that he has nowhere else to spend it? Chapter 209. Even after Aokiki Lily's voice fell, Shui Linglong in the VIP room was still in a daze and did not react. "Linglong girl, the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron has been won by someone," Tong Fu shouted, and Shui Linglong seemed to wake up from a dream. Gu Yi could only shake his head with a bitter smile and said, "Since someone has set their eyes on the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron, there is nothing we can do about it. If this person can completely comprehend and absorb the true meaning of alchemy and martial path in the cauldron, it will be worth 100,000 mid-grade yuan crystals. If not, it will be a big loss." Hearing Gu Yi's words, Shui Linglong's fragile heart felt slightly relieved. Jean de Bayeux and Zhang Yifeng returned to the VIP room. Nie Tian still had a calm smile on his face, as if nothing had happened. Jean de Bayeux felt his heart ache. He looked at Nie Tian unhappily and sighed. Prodigal? Nie Tian was also speechless. This son of the richest man was extremely stingy. After a while, Qiu Shan and the others returned to the VIP room. They knew that Nie Tian had won the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron and were very excited. Qiu Ling returned to the VIP room and glared at Jean de Bayeux fiercely. She said, "Damn fatty, it's just a piece of low-grade yuan crystal. How can you have the nerve to shout it out?" Jean de Bayeux smiled and said, "A thin stream flows for a long time, a thin stream flows for a long time. The commotion caused by the violet sun pill cauldron finally settled. In the end, Nye Tian still took back the pill cauldron. After a few dozen boring auctions, Nye Tian was on the verge of falling asleep. After a while, Lin Yifang, who was on the auction stage, suddenly laughed loudly with a somewhat crazy expression. She said as if there was no one else present, "I didn't expect it to be an ancient saber technique. It's really rare." Lin Yifang held an ancient scroll in her hand. Although it looked very dilapidated, it seemed to have a very mysterious martial path's true meaning flowing within it. Any martial technique, even the lowest grade, would definitely contain the true meaning of the martial way. It was precisely because of the existence of the true meaning of the martial way that martial techniques were not easy to replicate. Unless one was a heavenly emperor powerhouse, it was very difficult to replicate a martial technique. Lin Yifang looked at the martial art manual in her hand in a daze. It seemed like it was an extremely rare martial art manual. When this martial art manual appeared, Qiu Shan, who was beside Nye Tian, suddenly had a change in expression. He exclaimed, "What a familiar aura!" Nye Tian spread out his divine sense and frowned slightly. The martial true intent on the scroll seemed to have some similarities with Qiu Shan's saber qi. Could it be a remnant of Qiu Shan's blade art? Nye Tian suddenly remembered that Qiu Shan's blade art was a remnant, but he never mentioned it. The aura of the martial intent in Lin Yifang's martial art was connected to Qiu Shan's saber qi. The two clearly had a close connection. "Qiu Shan, don't get agitated." Nye Tian motioned for Qiu Shan to calm down and not show too much. "Yes." Qiu Shan nodded heavily, suppressing all the excitement in his heart. He was already very sure that the blade technique in Lin Yifang's hands was the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique that he was cultivating. The world-defying wild blade technique was the martial art that Qiu Shan's grandfather had left him, but he only had the first half of it, so he didn't know what level it was. He had once bitterly searched for the second half of the scroll, but to no avail. Who would have thought that the heavens would not disappoint those who were willing, and finally let him see the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique in this auction. If Qiu Shan could obtain the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique, his strength would have a qualitative increase, and his cultivation speed would also increase. Although he had only cultivated the first half of the world-defying wild blade technique, the speed of the great circulation in his body was faster than the average martial artist, so he guessed that the level of the world-defying wild blade technique must be very high, at least Earth rank. But Qiu Shan never knew where the world-defying wild blade technique came from, and his grandfather never told him. Although Qiu Shan's surname was Qiu, he was only a servant of the Qiu clan, and his grandfather's surname was Yi. When he was 4 years old, he suddenly left, and changed his name from Yi Shan to Qiu Shan. His own background had always been a secret that Qiu Shan wanted to explore, and his grandfather, he didn't know if he was still alive. On the auction stage, Lin Yifang gradually calmed down and immediately smiled. "Everyone, the next item to be auctioned is a remnant of a martial art, and it is also another treasure of this auction." Remnant of a martial art? What's there to auction? That's right, since it is a remnant, there is no way to cultivate it. Even if you forcefully cultivate it, you will definitely be restricted in the later stages, so you might as well not cultivate it. Old Mr. Lin, forget about the remnant of a martial art, let's auction the next one. Hearing that it was a remnant of a martial art, the people below were obviously unhappy, and they all shouted. Lin Yifang, however, smiled faintly and continued to speak with a kind expression. "Everyone, listen to this old man. Although this martial art is a remnant, its level is very high. If this old man is not wrong, this should be a heaven-rank martial art." "My dear mother, a heaven-rank martial art? Impossible! Isn't a heaven-rank martial art only in the 4 great clans? Old Mr. Lin can't be bluffing, right?" "Bluff your sister, Old Mr. Lin is an inner elder of the Lin clan, and the Lin clan is the 5th clan outside of the 4 great clans. Do you think the Lin clan's name can be easily bluffed? If you speak so casually again, be careful of your tongue. The heaven-rank martial art caused the people below to go crazy. Lin Yifang waved his hand and said, "The martial art in this old man's hands is a remnant of a saber art, called the world-defying wild saber art. Maybe you all do not know, but 80 years ago in the 3,000 small worlds, there was a heaven-defying swordsman named Yi Linyun, and he cultivated the world-defying wild saber art. This person was called the world-defying wild saber, and with the world-defying wild saber art, Yi Linyun once stepped into Sumi Ling City, and challenged the various geniuses of Sumi Ling City. Although he lost in the end, it was still a glorious defeat." Speaking to this point, Lin Yifang's face revealed a look of regret, and he sighed. But after that, no one knows what happened to this person, but like a mystery, he suddenly disappeared. In the 3,000 small worlds, there is no trace of the wild saber. Lin Yifang seemed to be telling a story. Although it was just a few words, it caused the hearts of the people below to itch. Someone below shouted, "Old Mr. Lin, who defeated that Yi Linyun in the end? Is it the current Tang family's patriarch, Lord Tang Hao, or the Emo family's patriarch, Lord Emo Zhaojing?" That's right. Who defeated Yi Linyun? The Tang family's patriarch, Tang Hao, and the Emo family's patriarch, Emo Zhaojing. These 2 people were known as the 2 peaks of the 3,000 small worlds, representing the strongest battle power. Therefore, everyone felt that if there was someone who could defeat Yi Linyun in Sumi Ling City 80 years ago, it would definitely be either Tang Hao or Emo Zhaojing. However, Lin Yifang shook his head and said, "I can't say this. I can only tell everyone that the person who defeated Yi Linyun back then was not Lord Tang Hao, nor was it Lord Emo Zhaojing, but someone else." Someone else, who could it be? Everyone was stunned and began to make wild guesses in their hearts. And in the VIP room, when Qiu Shan heard Lin Yifang's words, he was completely stunned.